Chapter 5:14. Yes, sir. The black-clothed woman, I.E., bowed and accepted the order. Soon after, I.E. immediately left the palace hall and began to mobilize her troops. She gathered a large amount of troops to open up a path for Lord Xionghe. Taoist Lu Su and Mei Ji were both looking at Xionghe with smiles on their faces. The handsome Taoist Lu Su said enthusiastically, "With Big Brother Xionghe personally setting out and this heavenly divine artifact personally bestowed by Lord Black Dragon, a mere Mount Bewitchu would definitely be nothing difficult. This little brother is also very bored here in the Black Dragon Pool. How about I follow Big Brother Xionghe to the Black Dragon Pool and observe Big Brother Xionghe's might from the side? Big Brother Lu's words are interesting. I'll go with you. When the time comes, I can watch Big Brother Xiong display his might from the side," Meiji said sweetly as she gently swayed her sleeves. Xionghe walked down from the main hall and stood beside Meiji and Taoist Lu Su. That nearly 3 meters tall figure caused Meiji and Taoist Lu Su to have no choice but to raise their heads to look at him. "Meiji, Lu Su, since you two want to go and take a look, then come with me." Xionghe slightly raised his head. The ominous glint in his eyes passed through the entrance of the palace hall and shot toward the south. Humph, Mount Bewitchu. After that, Xionghe walked out of the palace hall in large strides and headed toward the outside. In just a short while, nearly 10,000 people had gathered outside the Tyrant Bear Palace. To the Black Dragon Pool, 10,000 people was only a small portion. However, when the number of people exceeded 10,000, it looked like a sea of people. Those gods were discussing below, and it was very noisy. Thump, thump, thump. Heavy footsteps sounded. Xionghe's imposing figure appeared on the stage. He swept his gaze downward. After hearing the reprimands from some of the leaders of the Black Dragon Pool, the nearly 10,000 troops immediately grew silent. Everyone was respectfully looking at Lord Xionghe. "We pay our respects to Lord Xionghe." Nearly 10,000 people knelt down on one knee at the same time, their voices resounding. Meiji and Taoist Lu Su had also flown onto the stage. Merely, the two of them stood on either side of Xionghe. Meiji lightly smiled and said, "Big Brother Xiong, what an impressive display." Xionghe simply ignored Meiji. Instead, he waved his hand and shouted, "Set off." Immediately, the nearly 10,000 men split into groups and began to march toward the south in an orderly manner. The leader of the Black Dragon Pool, Lord Black Dragon, had not appeared for many years. As such, Xionghe's status in the Black Dragon Pool could be said to be number one. If he were to personally make a move, how could his extravagance be small? Xionghe was sitting on the recliner contentedly. 4 robust men with figures comparable to Xionghe were carrying him from below. In terms of strength, these 4 muscular men were all high-level deities. As for Lu Su and Meiji, who had come to watch the show, they were also being carried forward in reclining chairs. It's just that the 4 high-level deities below Lu Su and Meiji are all beautiful women. After traveling for close to 3 days, this army finally arrived at Mount Bewitchu. Qin Yu was standing on top of a certain tree. He was looking at the long line of troops in the distance. The troops in the front had just arrived at Mount Bewitchu. As for the troops in the middle and the troops in the back, there was still quite a bit of distance between them. What a grand display! Qin Yu had a slight smile on his face. He took a step forward and arrived at the edge of a cliff. Qin Yu sat on the edge of the cliff with Fu Bo standing behind him. "Master, it looks like there are nearly 10,000 of them." Uncle Fu took a glance and guessed the approximate number. When facing a great formation, numbers are useless. No matter how many people come, they will all die. I hope that the leader of the Black Dragon Pool will not be hot-headed. Otherwise, if too many people die, it would not be my intention. Qin Yu said with a light smile. "Uncle Fu, do you think this killing formation of mine will be able to stop them?" Uncle Fu shook his head and said with a smile, "Although the killing formation is gone, with its attack power, I reckon it will not be able to kill heavenly deity-level experts. As for this time, I reckon that the heavenly deity-level experts of the Black Dragon Pool should have arrived." The troops in the front had a total of 2,000 men. The troops in the back had a total of 2,000 men. As for the troops in the middle, there were nearly 6,000 men. As for Xiong He, Mei Ji and Lu Su, they were all in the middle of the army. By the time the entire army arrived at the foot of Mount Bewitch Yu, Qin Yu had already waited for close to an hour. All of the troops were on the ground. However, at this moment, a robust man flew out from the crowd of close to 10,000 men. He was wearing a black battle armor and had a ferocious face. The tyrannical aura emitted from his body could be felt from far away. Flying. As expected, heavenly deity-level experts have arrived. Qin Yu also stood up. When faced with heavenly deity-level experts, Qin Yu was unable to act as casually as before. However, right at the moment when Qin Yu stood up, 2 more people flew out from behind that robust man wearing the black battle armor. 3 heavenly deities, they truly think highly of me. Qin Yu also had a trace of excitement in his heart. 3 heavenly deities, I ought to be able to test out a lot of formation arrays. Right at the moment when Qin Yu was treating the 3 heavenly deities as white mice to test out his formation arrays, the 3 heavenly deities stood up. Xiong He was in the front. Taoist Lu Su and Mei Ji were behind him. People of Mount Bewitch Yu, listen up. I am Lord Xiong He of the Black Dragon Pool. If you are sensible, then obediently come out from Mount Bewitch Yu and allow yourself to be captured. Otherwise, do not blame me for being vicious and merciless. Xiong He's face was filled with disdain. Mei Ji and Taoist Lu Su glanced at each other. Xiong He, never heard of you. A clear and bright voice sounded. A figure flew out from Mount Bewitch Yu and stood in the sky above Mount Bewitch Yu. Seeing that someone had actually flown out, Xiong He's expression immediately changed. Even Mei Ji and Lu Su no longer had the relaxed expression they had earlier. Instead, they had a serious expression on their faces. Merely, the gaze that they looked to Xiong He with contained a trace of ridicule. Ah, it's a heavenly deity. It's actually a heavenly deity. This time around, there's going to be a great battle. The 10,000 troops of the Black Dragon Pool started to clamor. When they saw that their enemy was actually a heavenly deity, the atmosphere immediately flared up. Even Xiong He no longer had the domineering aura that he had at the beginning. How did he turn into a heavenly deity? Lu Qian was among the crowd. He looked to Qin Yu who was in the sky above Mount Bewitch Yu with a stupefied expression. Lu Qian still remembered the appearance of the person in front of him very clearly. This person was Xing Yuan's friend, that person called Qin Yu. Handsome little brother, I am called Mei Ji. That big guy is our Black Dragon Pool's Lord Xiong He. This is Taoist Lu Su. Little brother, what is your name? Mei Ji said sweetly. This lowly one is Qin Yu. Qin Yu directly said his name. The name Qin Yu would bring about a lot of troubles in the immortal, devil and demon realm. However, in the divine realm, there was no need for him to hide it. Xiong He frowned. He then coldly humphed and said, Qin Yu, never had I expected that you're also a heavenly deity. Since you're a heavenly deity and have occupied Mount Bewitch Yu, our Black Dragon Pool would definitely be magnanimous and not care about it. However, your conduct in this period of time is opposing our Black Dragon Pool. Speak, how do you plan to satisfy our Black Dragon Pool? Xiong He, Lu Su and Mei Ji were all low-level heavenly deities. Heavenly deities in the divine realm were extremely rare. Generally, all of the major powers would try to rope in heavenly deity experts. Xiong He was simply unable to determine whether Qin Yu was by himself or if he possessed a powerful background. The Black Dragon Pool could be considered to be a major power within the Yuchi city. However, when compared to Yuchi city and the other major cities, they were much weaker. Satisfy you all? That's right, my formations will definitely satisfy you all. Qin Yu said with a smile on his face. Xiong He's expression grew cold. This is the method you plan to satisfy us? Killing intent began to burst forth from Xiong He's eyes. Qin Yu smiled and said, That's right. Xiong He, Meiji, Lu Su, let me remind you all. I have set up a killing formation in the outermost region of Mount Bewitch You. I have also set up a killing formation in the central region of Mount Bewitch You. You all are welcome to try and break through it. After he finished saying those words, Qin Yu rushed into the mountain forest of Mount Bewitch You and disappeared from everyone's sight. Meiji, Lu Su, the two of you stand to the side. Xiong Hei had a gloomy expression. He extended his hand and a 4-meter-long scarlet-colored spiked club suddenly appeared in his hand. Dark green-colored heavenly divine energy was transmitted into the spiked club from Xiong Hei's hand. The spiked club started to tremble. Meiji and Lu Su glanced at each other. Big brother Xiong, with that mountain crusher in our hands, we will definitely be able to easily capture that Qin Yu, said Meiji with a smile. As for Xiong Hei himself, he took a step forward and rushed into the killing formation. Right after he entered the killing formation, masses of black flames rushed toward him. They just so happened to envelop Xiong Hei from all directions. However, to a low-level heavenly deity, the divine flames did not possess any harm. Yeah! Xiong Hei suddenly roared. The space surrounding his body started to distort. Xiong Hei held the spiked club with his thick hands. Dark green-colored heavenly divine energy was flowing through the surface of the spiked club. Only by pouring heavenly divine energy into a heavenly divine artifact would one be able to unleash the greatest attack power of a heavenly divine artifact. Mountain Crusher. Xiong Hei's spiked club ruthlessly smashed onto the ground of Mount Bewitch You. Qin Yu, who was on top of Mount Bewitch You and saw this scene from afar, was shocked to discover that the entire Mount Bewitch You slightly trembled. Even Qin Yu, who was on top of Mount Bewitch You, felt the trembling. However, what about Xiong Hei's surroundings? With Xiong Hei as the center, the mountain rocks within a circumference of 10 meters all turned into fine powder. As for the mountain within a circumference of over 100 meters, it cracked open. At the same time, the formation foundation that Qin Yu had set up in this region was also destroyed. Boom! The spiked club carried an enormous force. As if it was tearing apart space, it ruthlessly smashed onto the mountain. The mountain rocks within a circumference of over 100 meters all cracked open. Boom! 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 Like an earthquake, the mountain shook several tens of times in succession. The formation foundation of Mount Bewitch You was destroyed. The killing array dissipated. This Xiong Hei, how could his heavenly divine artifact be this powerful? Qin Yu suddenly stood up. He looked to Xiong Hei, who was holding onto the enormous spiked club at the foot of the mountain. Master, when a divine artifact is poured with divine energy, its might is much greater than when it was in the immortal, devil and demon realm. Using the same principle, when a heavenly divine artifact is poured with heavenly divine energy, its might would be the greatest, said Uncle Fu respectfully. At this moment, Xiong Hei was holding on to the enormous spiked club with one hand. He was walking toward the top of Mount Bewitch You step by step. Each of his steps caused the ground to tremble. The baleful aura on Xiong Hei's fierce and ferocious face was even more berserk than before. Chapter 5:15. Xiong Hei, 3 steps ahead of you is the next formation array. If you're able to break through it, then you'll be qualified to taste my strongest slaughtering array. Qin Yu's clear voice resounded through Mount Bewitch You. Xiong Hei raised his head and looked to the peak of Mount Bewitch You. He arrogantly roared, Qin Yu, hide yourself properly on the mountain. After this lord breaks through your formation, I will use this heavenly divine artifact to smash your head and destroy your true spirit. After he finished saying those words, Xiong Hei once again took large strides forward. Mount Bewitch You was close to 2,000 meters tall. Qin Yu was close to the peak of the mountain. Once Xiong Hei stepped into the formation, due to the formation, Xiong Hei would not be able to see Qin Yu. However, the formation was set up by Qin Yu. Thus, Qin Yu was able to clearly see each and every movement Xiong Hei made within the formation. Destroy my true spirit? Qin Yu muttered. Qin Yu knew very well that the true spirit was one's consciousness. Uncle Fu said respectfully, Master, For ordinary deities or those weaker than them, the true spirit will dissipate. Once the soul is destroyed, the true spirit will also dissipate. That is because the current true spirit is too weak. It is simply impossible for it to exist by itself. However, once the soul reaches the nascent soul realm and reaches the heavenly deity realm, even if the soul is destroyed, the true spirit will still be able to exist by itself. The prerequisite is that the true spirit will not be attacked by others. So what if the true spirit is present? Could it be that it can still be revived? Qin Yu looked to Uncle Fu. Uncle Fu replied respectfully, if the true spirit is present, although it is very difficult to revive, there are still precious medicinal pellets in the divine realm. Those medicinal pellets are capable of reviving people. Apart from that, Empyrean level experts are also capable of reviving people who only have their true spirit left. Qin Yu shook his head, smiled and said, Empyrean? The legendary Empyrean, how many people have actually seen one before? Actually, it is not only Empyreans. A long time ago, Old Master was still in the divine realm. At that time, there was an extremely glorious God King in the divine realm. She was known as the God King of Life. This God King of Life possessed the ability to revive people who only have their true spirits left. Uncle Fu replied respectfully, Oh, God King of Life? He actually has the ability to resurrect people. Could it be that there are no restrictions on him using this ability? Qin Yu said in surprise. Even the remaining true spirits could be revived. This was something that defied the heavens. How could there be no limits to doing this? There shouldn't be any restrictions. The Old Master said that in the entire divine realm, among the God Kings, no one could compare to the God King of Life in terms of saving lives. Uncle Fu sighed. It's a pity that the God King of Life is dead. How did he die? Qin Yu asked curiously. How could a God King level expert die so easily? Or, Uncle Fu said, in the divine realm, every 6 billion years, there will be a battle that covers the entire divine realm. Under normal circumstances, it is very rare for divine king level experts to fall in a battle. However, there have been cases in history. Qin Yu nodded slightly. Uncle Fu, how long until the next war? From Qin Yu's point of view, once a war broke out, if he became a master craftsman, then his benefits would be even greater. Uncle Fu said respectfully, there should be more than 1 billion years. It's been too long. Qin Yu sighed inwardly. Amen. Qin Yu's eyes suddenly shined. At this moment, Xiong He had already entered the formation array in the middle region of Mount Bewitch Yu. That formation array was an illusion formation array. Faced with this illusion formation array, Xiong He was caught unprepared. Haha, this stupid bear, it's extremely difficult for him to break through an illusion formation with brute force. Qin Yu smiled as he looked to Xiong He in the formation array. Mei Ji and Taoist Lu Su who were standing in the air were also puzzled. Why is Xiong He always circling in that 3 steps radius? Furthermore, he's smashing the ground non-stop. If he's smashing the ground within 3 steps radius, how large of an area would he be able to destroy? Mei Ji frowned. In the entire Black Dragon Pool, the person most proficient in formation arrays was none other than Taoist Lu Su. Even that Gong Sun Jin would frequently consult Taoist Lu Su. Taoist Lu Su's strength in formation arrays was already at the peak of level 2 formation arrays. Merely, the research on formation arrays was truly too complicated. If one did not have anyone to guide them, then it was very easy for one to lose the direction of one's deduction in this vast ocean of formation arrays and enter the wrong path. Not everyone had the books left behind by the craftsman god Cheho Yuan to carefully guide them. Xiong He ought to have entered into an illusion formation array. The current him likely still doesn't know that he's circling around. Furthermore, he also doesn't know that he's smashing the same ground. Taoist Lu Su was still staring at Xiong He in the Great Formation Array. Indeed, it was as Taoist Lu Su had guessed. Xiong He simply did not know that he was smashing the same ground. At this moment, what he saw was a vast expanse of earth. He did not care about anything else and only smashed the ground. Every time he smashed the enormous spiked club, he would create a large crater. Every time he ran, he would smash another crater. Just like this, he continued to smash the ground, smashing the ground over 100 times. Huff, huff. Xiong was gasping for breath. His spiked club was a heavy attack weapon. Furthermore, every time he smashed it, he would imbue it with a large amount of heavenly divine energy. Otherwise, how could he possibly smash the stones of the divine realm to such a large area? After smashing the ground over 100 times in succession, Xiong had consumed too much of his heavenly divine energy. What's going on? The blue veins on Xiong forehead were bulging. His gaze would occasionally look to the east and then to the north. Formation array. I'm actually still in a formation array. I've smashed the ground several hundred times. More than half of the entire Mount Bewitch You has been smashed. Why is the formation array still not broken? Xiong looked to the boundless prairie in his surroundings and grew a bit angry. When faced with an illusion array, the most effective method to break the formation array is... Xiong retrieved his spiked club, Mountain Crusher. Instead, he started to float in the air. His entire body was covered with jade green-colored heavenly divine energy. With Xiong as the center, the space within a 10-meter radius around him started to distort. The prairie that Xiong originally saw also started to distort. It turned into mountain rocks that shattered into powder. In other words, the 10-meter radius around Xiong had turned into the real Mount Bewitch You. As for the larger area around him, it was still an illusion. Haha, illusion array, formation array is merely a minor path. Before the power of space, wouldn't it still collapse? Said Xiong with a loud laugh. He started to fly forward. Wherever he flew past, the 10-meter radius around him would become real. It was simply impossible for the illusion to affect his senses. Just like that, Xiong easily passed through the illusion array. After passing through the illusion array, Xiong had ascended to the mountainside of Mount Bewitch You. Qin Yu, why aren't you accepting your death yet? Shouted Xiong with a clear voice. At this moment, Qin Yu was standing on the summit of Mount Bewitch You with his hands behind his back. With a clear voice he said, Xiong it's nothing much that you've broken my illusion array. If you continue forward, you will encounter my most powerful killing array. I shall see how you're going to break it. Killing array? Haha, simple, simple. Xiong was extremely confident. Although the killing array was capable of attacking, at the very least, it would not cause him to lose his sense of direction. From Xiong point of view, he only needed to forcibly endure for a while and then use his spiked club to smash the mountain and shatter the earth to destroy the foundation of the formation array. Simple. A light smile appeared on Qin Yu's face. Don't be too confident. Overconfidence will cause you to lose your life. Qin Yu was extremely confident in this killing array. This killing array was Qin Yu's highest achievement in the field of killing arrays. It was a rank 3 formation array. Furthermore, in terms of might, it was even stronger than ordinary rank 3 formation arrays. That was because this rank 3 formation array was mainly a fire attribute attack. Qin Yu possessed the Refining Flame wristband. The Refining Flame wristband was made from 9 purple origin flame beads. With the assistance of the Refining Flame wristband, Qin Yu was able to set up a fire attribute killing array. It was the most powerful killing array. I refuse to believe that you won't die under the attack of the white pure flames. Qin Yu's face was filled with confidence. The white pure flames were the true flames within the body of a heavenly deity. Qin Yu relied on the perfect overlaying of the 26 layers of formation arrays and the assistance of the Refining Flame wristband to unleash the white pure flames. When faced with the white pure flames, even a heavenly deity's body would not be able to withstand it. Unless they possessed a heavenly divine armor. It was already extremely rare for Xiong to possess a low-quality heavenly divine armor. How could he possibly possess a heavenly divine armor? Thus, in this battle, once Xiong entered it, he would definitely be completely burned by the white pure flames. Even his true spirit would not be left behind. Before the attentive gazes of Taoist Lu Su, Mei Ji and close to 10,000 deities, Xiong Hei stepped into Qin Yu's strongest killing array. Killing array, break for me. Xiong Hei excitedly extended his large and fat tongue and licked his thick lips. He held his spiked club with both of his hands and was about to ruthlessly smash it onto the ground. However, right at this moment, a lump of white pure flames emerged from the ground. White. Xiong Hei was startled. He then suddenly woke up. Ah, white pure flames. Like a madman, Xiong Hei violently retreated. However, at this moment, a lump of white pure flames also flew toward him from behind. Xiong Hei dodged unceasingly. He did not dare to approach the ground at all. That was because there were lumps of white pure flames emerging from the ground. There were also lumps of white pure flames in the sky. Sky, ground, front, back, left and right. White pure flames were flying toward Xiong Hei from all directions. As time passed, the number of white pure flames grew more and more. Furthermore, they had formed a cage and were flying toward Xiong Hei. White pure flames. How could there be this many white pure flames? Even a heavenly deity would not be able to emit this many white pure flames. Xiong Hei was about to cry. There was only a small amount of true flames in a person's body. Who could possibly use this many white pure flames to attack another person? However, Qin Yu had managed to do so. Relying on the Grand Mist spiritual treasure, the refining flame wristband, as well as the strongest killing formation that he could set up, he had set up a fire attribute killing formation. The level of this formation is still too low. If it were a level 4 formation or a level 5 formation, then I reckon that the entire formation would be filled with an endless amount of white pure flames. It would not be like right now, where there are only lumps of white pure flames. My current strength is still too low. Although I've completely refined the refining flame wristband, the amount of white pure flames emitted by the refining flame wristband is too small. If I were stronger, then I would be able to create a white pure flame hell with merely the refining flame wristband. Qin Yu sighed in his heart. Xiong Hei had already given up all hope. Faced with the white pure flames that were coming from all directions, Xiong Hei was already at a loss as to what to do. He was merely a low-level heavenly deity. If he were a mid-level heavenly deity, then with the comprehension of space that mid-level heavenly deities possessed, he would definitely be able to create an absolute domain and easily escape. However, he was only a low-level heavenly deity. The spatial restriction of the divine realm was too great. In the divine realm, he would only be able to fly. At the very most, he would only be able to distort the surrounding space. White pure flames. Xiong Hei looked to the high-quality divine armor on his body and could only smile bitterly. Faced with the white pure flames, it was simply impossible for a high-quality divine armor to withstand them for even a moment. Xiong Hei had given up all hope. The densely packed white pure flames flew toward Xiong Hei. They were only several meters away from him. However, at this moment, a scene that left everyone dumbfounded occurred. Bang! As if they were in chaos, the lumps of white pure flames actually lost control and flew in all directions. Furthermore, after flying for several meters, all of the white pure flames were extinguished. This. Xiong Hei stared at this scene with a stupefied expression. There was a large hole in his thigh and chest. Blood was flowing out from those holes unceasingly. However, he did not care about that in the slightest. Of the white pure flames that flew in all directions earlier, 2 lumps of white pure flames had landed on his body. As for the other white pure flames, they were extinguished before they could even touch him. Xiong Hei did not know what had happened. 26 overlapping formation arrays. According to the result of my deduction, this Xiong Hei ought to be dead. However, the energy of the white pure flames from earlier seemed to be too great. Even the 3rd and 8th layer of formation arrays were slightly affected. The killing formation that was originally formed as a whole actually collapsed just like that. Qin Yu found it hard to accept this result. Setting up a formation array was an extremely rigorous matter. This was especially true for a formation array with many overlapping formations. As long as a single formation array had a problem, the entire formation array would collapse. Master, this is the importance of experimenting with a formation array. Deductions are merely deductions. They are merely the most ideal situation. However, in reality, the more complicated a formation array is, the more difficult it is to obtain the result of the deduction. Uncle Fu said from the side. Qin Yu smiled and nodded. I understand this principle. However, never would I have expected that Xiong He actually managed to escape with his life from this formation array. In the past, Qin Yu had been looking forward to experimenting with his formation array the entire time and discovering the error in his deduction. However, when the error occurred, Qin Yu felt a bit unreconciled. After all, that low-level heavenly deity Xiong He had nearly lost his life. However now, huff, huff, the heavens are helping me, the heavens are helping me. Xiong He roared twice in excitement. His forehead, face and even back were filled with cold sweat. Xiong He used the remaining heavenly divine energy in his body to heal his injuries. To heavenly deities, injuries to their bodies were a small matter. Merely, it required the consumption of heavenly divine energy. As for the consumed heavenly divine energy, it required the use of divine spiritual stones to replenish it. With a flip of his hand, Xiong He took out a high-quality divine spiritual stone and quickly healed his injuries. Xiong He, you are truly lucky. Xiong He raised his head to look. Qin Yu was standing in the sky. At this moment, he was only 200 to 300 meters away from Xiong He. Qin Yu, even the heavens are helping me. Xiong He was filled with confidence. Even your strongest formation array has been ruined. What other methods do you have? Haha, prepare to die. Xiong He rapidly rushed toward Qin Yu. As Qin Yu saw Xiong He flying toward him, a sentence from the 900 scrolls of the Array Path appeared in his mind. Among the 3 great formation arrays, killing arrays, trapping arrays and defensive arrays, the one with the strongest might is the trapping array. Of the 900 scrolls of the Array Path, over 500 scrolls were all about trapping arrays. As for the scrolls about killing arrays and defensive arrays, there were only close to 400 scrolls. I hope that this sentence from the Array Path is correct. If it's false, then I would be forced to use martial power. I am not someone who likes to use martial power. Qin Yu muttered. However, he began to move. Chapter 5:16. Qin Yu's entire body was like a graceful wind, constantly drifting in the sky. As for Xiong He, he was frantically chasing after Qin Yu. His eyes were glaring at Xiong He as he roared. Qin Yu, if you have the ability, then don't run away. Fight me fair and square. Qin Yu continued to change directions. However, he said, Xiong He, don't get angry. I am a formation researcher. I am not fond of using martial power. Qin Yu spoke in a dignified manner, but while his hands were flying, they were constantly forming one hand seal after another. Countless talismans flew out from Qin Yu's hands. Red, green, gray, white, black, all kinds of colors of light began to appear in the air. Although Qin Yu was dodging non-stop, Qin Yu was still flying back and forth in circles in the sky above Mount Biwichu. Mei Ji and Taoist Lu Su were standing in the air. They were chatting with each other. Taoist Lu Su shook his head, sighed and said, although Big Brother Xiong He's strength is powerful, his agility and speed are greatly inferior to that Qin Yu. Look at how ingenious Qin Yu's movements are, and how clean his turns are. Even though Big Brother Xiong He would sometimes exhaust a large amount of heavenly divine energy to increase his speed and catch up to Qin Yu, while Qin Yu was able to make sudden turns at extreme speed, Big Brother Xiong He is unable to do so. That Qin Yu is constantly flying and making hand seals. What is he doing? Mei Ji said with a frown. Taoist Lu Su smiled and said, in that case, Qin Yu also knew that although it would be easy for the person who set up the formation array to use the divine spiritual stones as the formation array's foundation, once the enemy breaks through the formation array's foundation, the formation array would be broken. Therefore, Qin Yu was prepared to provide the energy with his own body. There's no need for divine spiritual stones to provide energy. Oh, Brother Lu is really smart. Meiji praised. If that Qin Yu doesn't use the divine spiritual stone, Xiong Hei wouldn't be able to use his spiked club to destroy the array foundation. Doesn't that mean we can't break the formation? No, breaking a formation doesn't necessarily require breaking the formation's foundation. Taoist Lu Su explained. For Qin Yu to do this, although there is no longer any divine spiritual stone as the formation base, he himself is the formation base. Meiji shook her head and said, once Xiong Hei is trapped in the formation array, how is he going to attack Qin Yu? To provide one's own energy is a disadvantage. The disadvantage is that one must stay within the formation array the entire time and cannot leave. In fact, one cannot even use a large amount of divine energy to attack. Explained Taoist Lu Su. What Taoist Lu Su said was correct. What Qin Yu was doing now was to set up a trapping array, and he was prepared to provide the energy needed for the entire trapping array. The arrangement of the trapping array was very complicated. Qin Yu spent an entire day and half of the night to arrange the trapping array. 1 day and 1 night sounded quite long. But in the God realm, this was nothing. When heavenly deity-level experts of the divine world fought, it was normal for them to fight for hundreds or even thousands of years. This was especially true for heavenly gods of the same level, whose control over space was comparable. It was extremely difficult for them to kill each other. Thus, the battle would also drag on for a very long time. Compared to an endless amount of life, what could hundreds or thousands of years be considered? Xiong Hei, have a taste of my great formation array. Qin Yu laughed out loud. He then stood in the air. Countless talismans and seals were floating around Qin Yu. At the same time, there were also all kinds of colored belts of light. They had already covered a circumference of 10 miles. This was a relatively large trapping array. 4 rays of dark golden-colored divine energy flew out from Qin Yu's body. These 4 rays of divine energy were assimilated into the trapping array and provided the energy needed for the trapping array. Haha, you're stopping? Are you courting death? Seeing that Qin Yu had actually stopped, Xiong Hei immediately rushed toward Qin Yu. However, suddenly, Qin Yu disappeared before his eyes. Those talismans and belts of light that he was able to clearly see had also disappeared. Xiong Hei looked to his surroundings. He was actually only able to see a world of light. Red, black, white, green. The walls formed by all kinds of colors had formed an enormous world. What is going on here? Xiong Hei was still relatively calm. After a short moment, a smile appeared on Xiong Hei's face. This is an illusion formation. However, why is this Qin Yu using the same method as last time? Xiong Hei, I have yet to name this formation array. Today, I shall name it Trapping Bear. If you are able to break this formation array, I will admire you. Qin Yu's voice sounded in the entire region of the Great Formation Array. Formation Array. Trapping Bear. After naming such a childish formation array, Qin Yu had a smile on his face. Merely, Xiong Hei was furious. Qin Yu, watch how I am going to break your illusion formation. Xiong Hei roared. Jade green-colored divine energy began to spread out from his body. At the same time, the space surrounding him began to distort. Amen. Xiong Hei discovered that something was amiss. In the past, the illusions created by the illusion formation would naturally be broken apart when faced with a distortion of space. However, these various colored walls and the ground were actually very difficult to break apart. The reason why an illusion formation is because it is mainly an illusion. Furthermore, the illusion can change unceasingly. However, these various colored walls could be considered to be real. Qin Yu's voice sounded in the region of the formation array. There was another person on Mount Bewitchu who was watching all of this. This person was Uncle Fu. Old Master, in merely 200,000 years, Master was able to research the trapping formation array to such a level. He was able to make the 5 elemental energy, light and dark energy completely coordinate with one another and form this level 3 trapping formation array. Likely, Master will also be able to reach your goal in the future, said Uncle Fu in his heart as he looked to the great formation array in the sky. That Qi knew, the energy that he emitted earlier was divine energy. Dark golden-colored divine energy. I saw it clearly. What's going on? Taoist Lu Su, who was watching the battle, was confused. Taoist Lu Su and them all saw how Qin Yu set up the formation array earlier and provided the energy to emit 4 rays of divine energy. Earlier, when Qin Yu flew, everyone thought that Qin Yu was a heavenly deity. However, how could a heavenly deity emit divine energy? Meiji was also confused. Perhaps this Qin Yu's soul has just reached the heavenly deity level and the energy within his body has yet to completely transform. This was the only explanation Meiji could think of. From high-level deity to low-level heavenly deity, one's soul must first reach the nascent soul level. Only then would the energy within one's body transform. However, generally, people who had just reached the heavenly deity level would hide themselves somewhere and only come out after their energy had completely transformed. This Qin Yu, why did he not even transform his divine energy before he came out? This was the only explanation Meiji and Taoist Lu Su could think of. Flying was a remarkable ability that only heavenly deities possessed. In all these years, no one had ever violated this rule. Real? Good. Xiong Hei coldly humphed. Holding his spiked club with one hand, he ruthlessly smashed it onto the red-colored wall before him. When his spiked club smashed onto the red-colored wall actually trembled several times. However, it did not break. Xiong Hei opened his eyes wide. As for Qin Yu, who was in the center of the formation array, he nodded in his heart. The 5 elemental energy complemented each other. On top of that, the entire Great Formation Array was composed of multiple layers of formation arrays. On top of that, the principle of the defensive formation array. I don't believe it. Xiong Hei changed his single hand into 2 hands. He grabbed onto his spiked club and ruthlessly smashed it onto the red-colored wall. The red-colored wall shook violently. However, it still did not break. Xiong Hei rapidly smashed his spiked club twice in succession. The wall was no longer able to withstand his attacks and a large gap appeared on it. Xiong Hei rapidly passed through the red-colored wall. However, after passing through the red-colored wall, he was met with a white-colored wall. There were also some passageways surrounding the white-colored wall. The passageways were composed of monotonous colors. I shall see how many layers of walls this trapping formation array of yours has. Xiong Hei coldly humphed. Xiong Hei then grabbed his spiked club with both hands and began to frantically smash the wall of light. Xiong Hei did not know that the wall of light of the trapping formation array was a barrier that was combined with the defensive formation array. It was also relatively difficult to destroy it. Furthermore, Xiong Hei also did not discover that when he was smashing another wall, the wall that he smashed earlier had already returned to its original state. However, the energy that Qin Yu used to form the wall of light was the divine energy. This caused the might of the formation array to be a bit weaker. Boom! 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 The people outside, such as Taoist Lu Su, Meiji and them, were simply unable to see what was happening within the trapping formation array. All they could hear were bursts of rumbling sounds. This sort of rumbling sound continued for 3 days and 3 nights. The light of day, the curtain of darkness, the two of them alternately covered the entire divine realm. Finally, the rumbling sound stopped. Inside the trapping formation array, Xiong Hei was gasping for breath. 3 entire days of frantically smashing walls had already exhausted him. Fuck, I've smashed over 10,000 walls. Furthermore, I've been smashing forward the entire time. Regardless of how big this formation array is, it should still be broken. Xiong Hei felt that he was about to go insane. There were only those few colors in this trapping formation array. The walls were also separated into 2 different colors, red and white. As for the bends, they were also separated into black and green. Some of the doors that appeared were also golden. In short, there were only those few colors. Regardless of where Xiong-hei smashed the walls, he would always feel as if he was walking in the same place. That was because every location was more or less the same. Even the layout was exactly the same. Am I walking in circles at the same place? No, I'm not. I'm very clear that I've been walking forward the entire time. Xiong-hei was truly confused. He looked at the unchanging layout of his surroundings. Red walls and black bends. Xiong-hei understood that as long as he smashed through the red walls, the next location would be the white walls and green bends. Then, they would appear alternately, as if he was walking back and forth non-stop. Not only were there walls in front, behind, left, and right, there were also walls above his head. Xiong-hei had once smashed the walls upward or downward. However, no matter how he smashed the walls, he was unable to leave this desolate and monotonous place. Exactly what is going on? If there was no gravity, I might not even know up and down. Xiong-hei raised his head and looked at the walls above him. Then, he looked at the walls to his left and right. They were exactly the same. Madness. Xiong-hei was truly about to go insane. After a year. Let me out, let me out. Fuck, let me out. This was the first time that Xiong-hei asked Qin to let him out. This meant that he had admitted defeat. It's very simple. I don't want your life. I only want you to kowtow 3 times and admit defeat. I will immediately let you out of this trapping array. Qin Yu's voice sounded from within the Great Formation Array. Fuck. Bullshit. Xiong-hei cursed angrily. He did not bother to speak anymore. It had only been a year. Back then, he had sparred with Taoist Lu Su for over 700 years. After reaching the heavenly deity level, Xiong-hei possessed the ability to endure loneliness. Merely, before him were still red or white walls and black or green bends. The layout was also the same. The monotonous scenery had already caused Xiong-hei to feel dizzy. Being trapped for a short year was even more tiring than fighting against Taoist Lu Su for over 700 years. 10 years later, Xiong-hei discovered that his dull days were gone. That was because those walls were no longer as easy for him to smash. Once he smashed the walls, the shattered walls would burst forth with flames, lightning and various other kinds of attacks. The more time passed, the more strange the attacks became. Qin Yu was sitting cross-legged in the center of the Great Formation Array with a smile on his face. Currently, what Qin Yu needed to do was to try his best to fuse the killing array with the trapping array. Merely, it was extremely difficult to fuse them perfectly. Qin Yu had been trying non-stop all these years. As for the pitiful Xiong-hei, he was merely an experimental subject. Neither Taoist Lu Su nor Meiji dared to enter the Great Formation Array. That was because Taoist Lu Su, who had studied formation arrays, knew that once one entered the formation array, if one was unable to break through the formation array, then one could only be trampled upon by others. Xiong-hei had been trapped in the Great Formation Array for over 200 years now. A portion of the 10,000-strong army had already returned. However, there were still many people waiting here. Ordinarily, these people would even spar with each other to kill time. Meiji, you've returned to see Lord Black Dragon. What did Lord Black Dragon say? Taoist Lu Su looked to Meiji. Meiji had just returned to the Black Dragon Pool once to report the matter regarding Xiong-hei. To the ordinary people of the Black Dragon Pool, Lord Black Dragon had already disappeared. However, Taoist Lu Su, Meiji and Xiong-hei all knew that Lord Black Dragon had actually been in the Black Dragon Pool the entire time. Lord Black Dragon said that this matter is merely a minor matter. What he is currently dealing with is a major matter. Furthermore, Xiong-hei is still alive. Lord Black Dragon will not come and deal with this matter for the time being. Meiji said. Taoist Lu Su nodded. Lord Black Dragon's reaction was as he had anticipated. Meiji, what do you think Lord Black Dragon is planning to do in all these hundreds of millions of years? Taoist Lu Su asked Meiji. Meiji shook her head. I don't know. It's best that you don't think too much about it. Xiong-hei has started smashing again. He is truly persevering. Meiji looked to the great formation array in the sky. Boom! 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 Sounds rang out once again. Chapter 5:17. The sky was as blue as the finest celadone. As for the enormous formation with a circumference of 10 miles floating in the sky, it was still the same as it was 200+ years ago. Year after year, the rumbling sounds from the formation would still occasionally sound. Evidently, Xiong-hei was still alive. There were several thousand troops from the Black Dragon Pool below Mount Bewitchu. All of the deities were chatting, training, cursing and so on. It's already been 200+ years. Lord Xiong-hei should just directly admit defeat. Or save his strength. Why is he always resisting? He hasn't come out for over 200 years. Did he really think that he would be able to come out? An old man with a head full of green short hair sat cross-legged on top of a stone as he spoke with dissatisfaction. There were several tens of deities beside this old man. Among them, a purple-haired woman coldly snorted and said, "Old Green, don't gossip here. Lord Xiong-hei is not someone that you can evaluate. Look at how Lord Xiong-hei is trying his best to attack the formation non-stop. He has not given up even after over 200 years. For you to have the same perseverance as Lord Xiong-hei, I truly admire you. Even though he knows that he can't do it, he still does it. Others have said that Lord Xiong-hei's true form is a bear. In the past, I doubted it. However now, it would appear that it's true." A man with a scholarly appearance leaned against a large tree and said with a smile, "To the deities who had lived for a long time and were bored, when they had nothing to do, they would be able to watch their boss suffer a great loss. Although they would usually be very respectful before Xiong-hei." Qin Yu sat cross-legged. Beneath him was a lump of green light. That green light was like a lump of cloud. Qin Yu had sat cross-legged like this for over 200 years. In the past 200+ years, Qin Yu had not moved at all. Qin Yu lightly raised his brows. With a smile on his face, he said, "Xiong-hei, it's already been over 200 years. How much longer are you planning to resist? Do as I say. Kneel down and kowtow 3 times to admit defeat. If you do that, I will let you go." At this moment, Xiong-hei, who was in the Great Formation, was only wearing a pair of large underpants. His chest that was covered with black chest hair was bare. His bare thighs were also covered with black hair. If one did not look at his face, he was simply no different from a bear. Huff, huff. Xiong-hei placed his spiked club to the side. He sat on the ground and gasped for breath. Xiong-hei turned around and looked at the white wall before him. It was so white that it dazzled his eyes. He then looked at the green passageway next to him. It was so green that he wanted to vomit. It was too monotonous. 200 years of devastation. This Qin Yu is too abnormal. Xiong-hei was so angry that he clenched his fists tightly. His entire body was trembling. Fuck, he was still fine a few years ago. Why is it that he's always attacking me when I'm not smashing the wall? As time passed, Qin Yu became more and more proficient in fusing the killing formation with the trapping formation. Practice was the best way to learn. These 200 years of learning were much more effective than Qin Yu's thousands of years of deduction. If this Xiong-hei were to truly kowtow and beg for forgiveness, Qin Yu would not be willing to part with such a good experimental subject. Heavenly deities were used as test subjects, and they wouldn't die so easily. Where could he find such a person? Exactly how long are you planning to imprison me for? Xiong-hei suddenly raised his head and roared. His eyes were filled with anger and grief. Don't worry. I still have a lot of methods that I haven't used yet. The Tao of formations is boundless. If I am to slowly experiment, even if I have to experiment for 10,000 years, 1,000,000 years, 100 million years, there would still be no end to it. Qin Yu spoke with a unique tone. It was as if he was infatuated with formations. Xiong-hei, for you to be able to taste so many formations, you should feel proud. Xiong-hei was on the verge of collapse. If he were to train in seclusion for 1,000,000 years, he would not mind it in the slightest. If he were to be in a high-intensity battle with others, he would be able to endure it even if he were to fight for several thousand years. However, being in this trapping formation was tormenting him unceasingly. It was tormenting his nerves. The monotonous and dull scenery in his surroundings. It was so much so that he would feel a headache whenever he saw this color. It was so big that he felt as if his head was going to explode. All of this had caused Xiong-hei to be extremely irritable, especially when he thought about how this sort of irritable days would be endless. Xiong-hei started to tremble. Even his soul was trembling. Xiong-hei clenched his teeth. Suddenly, he raised his head and said with absolute determination, "Qin Yu, Lord Qin Yu, I beg of you, please spare me. Ah, please spare me. I have eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai and have offended you, Senior." Xiong-hei was unable to resist anymore. "Oh, you're begging for forgiveness? However, don't forget what I said earlier. Kowtow 3 times. Qin Yu said with a smile. Qin Yu still remembered how tyrannical and arrogant Xiong-hei was when he led his army to Mount Bewitchu. He held onto his spiked club and smashed it crazily. His current pitiful appearance truly caused one to sigh endlessly. Kowtow. Xiong-hei's entire body was shivering. His big black face had turned deep red like a monkey's buttocks. In that case, you can wait for another 1 or 2 million years. Perhaps I might be in high spirits and research for over 100 million years. You can slowly wait in this great bear trapping formation. Qin Yu's voice was still neither angry nor annoyed. 100 million years. Beads of sweat the size of pearls appeared on Xiong-hei's forehead and cheeks. Xiong-hei touched his face with his thick black hands. The sweat dripped onto the ground. However, Xiong-hei still had his head lowered. No one knew what he was thinking. After a long period of silence. "Qin Yu, you must agree to a request of mine. If you do, I will kowtow." Xiong-hei raised his head. His eyes were filled with absolute determination. Qin Yu was astonished. This stupid bear was truly planning to kowtow? In Qin Yu's heart, deities were generally extremely arrogant. It was extremely difficult for them to lower their proud heads. "Speak, what request?" Qin Yu said with a smile. In his heart, Qin Yu was curious as to what request Xiong-hei might have. "If I am to truly kowtow to you, you must promise me one thing. You must not spread the news of me kowtowing to you," said Xiong-hei solemnly. "Okay, I promise," Qin Yu said straightforwardly. "Lord Qin Yu, please swear an oath. That way, I will be able to feel more at ease." Xiong-hei continued to state his request. Qin Yu smiled. Good, I'll agree to it. I swear to the heavens that if I am to tell others about Xiong-hei kowtowing to you today, I will suffer the wrath of the heavens." Only then did Xiong-hei let out a long sigh of relief. "Lord Qin Yu, I admit defeat." Xiong-hei suddenly stood up. Then he kneeled down on both knees and knocked his forehead onto the ground 3 times. "These 3 kowtows, I hope that Lord Qin Yu will be able to forgive me. Please spare me this one time." After he finished saying those words, Xiong-hei's forehead was still knocked onto the ground. He was waiting for Qin Yu's response. At this moment, Xiong-hei was extremely furious. "Qin Yu, once I leave this place, I will definitely make you regret your actions today. I will make you pay 100 times, 1,000 times, for what you've done today. Haha, to be able to obtain 3 kowtows from a heavenly deity is even more satisfying than killing a heavenly deity. Haha." Qin Yu's loud laughter sounded. Xiong-hei's face immediately grew even darker. At this time, the trapping formation, which was originally composed of red, white, black, green, gold, and other colors, began to collapse. Countless walls turned into ribbons of light, and countless runes, seals, and runes disappeared. Xiong-hei raised his head and looked to the sky. An azure blue sky. Pure white silk like floating clouds. He lowered his head and looked to the ground. A verdant and lush mountain forest. Several thousand deities were currently raising their heads to look at him in shock. Among them were Meiji and Taoist Lu Su. "I've finally regained my freedom." Once Xiong He obtained his freedom, he felt a burst of happiness. He raised his head and started to howl. His voice was like a rumbling thunder that resonated through the entire heaven and earth. Xiong He is able to endure what others cannot endure. Qin Yu admires you. Xiong He, you can return now. Qin Yu's clear voice sounded. Xiong He looked to the distance. Several hundred meters away from Xiong He, Qin Yu was standing in the air. His long black hair was drifting with the wind. His gown was fluttering in the wind. At this moment, Taoist Lu Su and Meiji had also flown up from below. In a short moment, they arrived beside Xiong He. Taoist Lu Su asked curiously, "Big brother Xiong He, what did you endure?" The muscles in Xiong He's eyes trembled. A trace of ruthlessness flashed through his eyes. He said via divine awareness voice transmission, "Lu Su, Meiji, that Qin Yu's flight is extremely fast. His speed is extremely fast. The three of us should join hands and kill him from 3 different directions. The 2 of you are faster than me to begin with. If the 3 of us join hands, we will definitely be able to kill him." Lu Su and Meiji glanced at each other. "Brother Lu, what do you think?" Meiji asked via divine awareness voice transmission. "That's doable. That Qin Yu would require a certain amount of time to set up a formation array. The trapping array that he had set up earlier had already dissipated. If he were to set it up again, it would require a day or 2. Such a long period of time would be sufficient for us to kill him," said Taoist Lu Su. Xiong He looked to Lu Su and Meiji. Lu Su and Meiji smiled and nodded. Xiong He's smile immediately blossomed. Xiong He coldly looked to Qin Yu in the distance. He shouted angrily, "Qin Yu, for you to humiliate me like this today, I shall avenge you." After he finished saying that, Xiong He charged toward Qin Yu like a meteorite from outer space. With an earth-shattering aura, he charged toward Qin Yu. As for Meiji and Taoist Lu Su, they turned into 2 light breezes. They were planning to surround Xiong He from the side. Seeing this scene, Qin Yu merely smiled and nodded. "Sure enough, it's as I anticipated. However, to be able to force this Xiong He to kowtow to me in the last couple months, it could be said that I've made a profit." Qin Yu had a feeling that he reckoned that he was only a couple months away from breaking through to the origin stage. Actually, even if Xiong He did not beg for forgiveness, Qin Yu would still have to dissolve the formation array and wholeheartedly break through to the origin stage in a couple months. Like a sharp arrow, Qin Yu's entire body shot downwards. "Where do you think you're going?" Xiong He's bloodshot eyes were incomparably malevolent. Like a cannonball, he smashed downward. As for Meiji, Lu Su and Meiji, they chased after him. However, when Qin Yu entered the forest and the 3 of them chased after him, they discovered, "He's gone?" Meiji and Lu Su were both incomparably puzzled. "Gone? Impossible." Xiong He was like a mad blind man. He was running amok on Mount Bewitchu. With a malevolent expression, he roared, "Qin Yu, come out, come out." Chapter 518. Rumble. The mountain forest was trembling. The entire Mount Bewitchu was trembling non-stop. Shattered rocks rolled down from the mountain unceasingly. Large trees were smashed apart. Flowers and grasses were crushed. The entire Mount Bewitchu was in a complete mess. "Qin Yu, get out here." The furious Xiong He grabbed his spiked club and frantically began to sweep through the entire Mount Bewitchu. Facing Xiong He's overflowing anger, the entire Mount Bewitchu was trembling. Boom! 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 The numerous large craters left behind by the spiked club had caused the entire Mount Bewitchu to appear like a face filled with scars. Xiong He flew to the foot of the Mount Bewitchu and stood beside Taoist Lu Su and Meiji. Xiong He was still gasping for breath. He held his spiked club with one hand. His pupils that were blazing like ghost flames emitted a frantic and furious gaze. He swept his gaze over the entire Mount Bewitchu. It was as if he wanted to find Qin Yu. Big Brother Xiong-hei, don't be angry, Taoist Lu Su urged. However, Xiong-hei acted as if he did not hear anything. He continued to look at the various locations of the Mount Bewitchu. Big Brother Xiong, isn't it merely a single Qin Yu? There's no need for you to be this angry, Meiji urged with a soft voice. Xiong-hei glared at Meiji with his frantic gaze. This caused Meiji's voice to suddenly stop. Seeing that Meiji no longer said anything, Xiong-hei once again looked to the Mount Bewitchu. Big Brother Lu, what's going on with this Xiong-hei? He's been trapped for over 200 years. Is it really worth it for him to be this frantic? Meiji said to Taoist Lu Su via divine awareness voice transmission. Taoist Lu Su looked to Xiong-hei. He also said via divine awareness voice transmission. Logically, it shouldn't be. However, Meiji, do you still remember the words that Qin Yu once said? Xiong-hei, you can endure what others cannot. Say, what exactly did Xiong-hei endure in that great formation array? For him to be this angry right now, could it be related to that matter? That's right, that's very possible. Meiji expressed her approval. However, what sort of humiliation did Xiong-hei receive? Taoist Lu Su and Meiji had never imagined that the extremely arrogant Xiong-hei would kowtow to Qin Yu. Lu Su. Xiong-hei's gaze suddenly shifted to Taoist Lu Su. Xiong-hei's aghast gaze had caused Taoist Lu Su to become extremely careful. Big Brother Xiong-hei, is there something you need? Taoist Lu Su did not wish to anger this crazy bear, especially when this bear was still in a berserk state. Taoist Lu Su still remembered that before Xiong-hei possessed a heavenly divine artifact, Xiong-hei was able to fight against him for several hundred years and even held the upper hand. As for Xiong-hei, he had obtained a heavenly divine artifact bestowed upon him by Lord Black Dragon. His strength had become the strongest among the three of them. That was why Xiong-hei's power was the strongest. Lu Su, aren't you proficient in formations and other techniques? Immediately set up a large formation and burn down the entire Mount Bewitchu, burn it until there's nothing left. The gaze with which Xiong-hei looked to Mount Bewitchu was filled with savagery. I must definitely find this Qin Yu. Even if I cannot find him, I must still destroy his mountain. Although Xiong-hei had swept through Mount Bewitchu earlier, the most he could do was to create some large craters and break some large trees. There was not much of an effect from his actions. Destroy this Mount Bewitchu? That's an easy task. We merely need to use the extremely silent heavenly flames, said Lu Su with a smile. As a low-level heavenly deity, Lu Su's strength could not be considered to be strong. However, he was proficient in some of the unorthodox techniques. For him, destroying a Mount Bewitchu was a piece of cake. Big Brother Lu, it'll depend on your ability, said Meiji sweetly. Taoist Lu Su started to float in the air. He casually tossed out 36 mid-quality divine spiritual stones from his hands. These 36 mid-quality divine spiritual stones landed in all directions of the Mount Bewitchu. They surrounded the entire Mount Bewitchu. Gorgeous talismans were being shot out from Taoist Lu Su's hands unceasingly. To an outsider, those peculiar talismans were extremely profound and complicated. However, those who were proficient in formations were able to immediately understand the uses of the different talismans. After spending close to 2 hours, a large formation array that covered the entire Mount Bewitchu was finally formed. Chi-chi. The entire formation array started to emit rays of golden light. At the same time, countless golden flames started to appear like a flood. In practically a blink of an eye, they had engulfed the entire Mount Bewitchu. These golden flames even had a faint blue-colored flame on their outer layer. Extremely silent heavenly flames. If this was in the immortal, devil and demon realm, then even ordinary level 9 immortal emperors and demon emperors would not be able to withstand it. However, in the divine realm, the extremely silent heavenly flames were only capable of burning those plants and some ordinary divine realm demonic beasts. Ordinary divine realm demonic beasts that were not even at the deity level were also being burned to death by the extremely silent heavenly flames. All kinds of miserable cries sounded unceasingly. At this moment, the animals of Mount Bewitch You that had hidden themselves and escaped the calamity were all in a miserable state. If it were the black divine flames, then they would be able to instantly die without any pain. However, the extremely silent heavenly flames were only capable of slowly burning them to death, causing them to suffer for an even longer period of time. The trees had turned into ashes. The lake water had dried up. Even the plants on the stones had been completely burned. Only the stones that had been burned to the point of cracking remained, as expected of the stones of the divine realm. At the very most, they would be burned to the point of cracking. The extremely silent heavenly flames were unable to burn them to ashes. After burning for close to an hour, the overflowing flames had turned the several thousand faces at the foot of the mountain into a golden color. When the extremely silent heavenly flames dissipated, the entire Mount Bewitch You had become bare. The only thing that remained were the ugly stones. Merely by looking at the scene before their eyes, it was simply impossible to imagine how beautiful this place used to be. Big Brother Xiong-hei. Lu Su quietly looked to Xiong-hei beside her. Even though Mount Bewitch You had been burned to the ground, they were still unable to see Qin Yu. Qin Yu had disappeared just like that. He had disappeared before everyone's eyes. Xiong-hei's eyes emitted a dim black radiance as he swept his gaze across the bare Mount Bewitch You. Then, with a cold voice, he said, "Humph, you might be able to escape the first time, but you won't be able to escape the second time. Let's return to the Black Dragon Pool." "Yes, Big Brother Xiong," Meiji said sweetly. Right after Xiong-hei took 2 steps forward, he saw the stele. On the stele were the words Mount Bewitch You. Due to the fact that this stele was located at the foot of the mountain, it was not damaged. Upon seeing this stele, Xiong-hei recalled the owner of this Mount Bewitch You, Qin Yu. When he thought of Qin Yu, a heart-piercing humiliation emerged from his heart. Humph! Like an enormous axe, Xiong-hei's leg ruthlessly smashed onto the stele. Bang! The stele was torn apart. It shattered into 4 pieces. Only the word, Bewitch, remained intact. Under the lead of the 3 heavenly deities, the majestic several thousand troops of the Black Dragon Pool left Mount Bewitch You just like that. Only the completely burned Mount Bewitch You and the shattered stele remained. Inside the second layer space of the Zhonglan's realm, outside of an elegant courtyard was a thick and solid tree that was filled with leaves. Below the tree were 2 cyan-colored stone tables. Uncle Fu, Kuro, Wu Lan, Wu He, Lu Shui and Hong Yu, the 6 of them sat down at the 2 tables. All 6 of them had expressions of worry in their eyes. That was because earlier, before Qin Yu entered the courtyard, he had said to them, "Everyone, this time around, I will be entering seclusion training to seek for a breakthrough. To me, this time around, my training is extremely important. At the same time, it is also somewhat dangerous. Furthermore, I do not know how long it will take for me to make a breakthrough. I hope that you all do not worry. At the very least, there will not be any danger to my life during this training." After he finished saying those words, Qin Yu merely patted Kuro's shoulder and then walked into the courtyard. There will not be any danger to my life? However, Kuro did not believe that. He believed that Qin Yu was deliberately comforting him and making him feel at ease. Kuro looked to the surrounding people and said solemnly, "During the period of time when Big Brother is making a breakthrough, I will be waiting here. From today onwards, you all are not allowed to make a ruckus here so as to not disturb Big Brother." Uncle Fu and the others nodded. From this moment onwards, the 5 of them did not say a single word and quietly waited. Kuro looked to the secluded courtyard and began to worry in his heart. "Big Brother, you must not lose your life for the sake of stellar transformations." Kuro was worried in his heart. Within the secluded courtyard, Qin Yu's room. Qin Yu was sitting cross-legged on a praying mat. He was completely silent. In actuality, there were still several months before the final breakthrough. However, at this moment, Qin Yu had already made his preparations. However, even now, Qin Yu had yet to discover the most perfect evolution path. Will I die? Qin Yu asked himself. If he did not pursue perfection and use the safest evolution path, he would definitely not die. However, the safest evolution path was also the one with the weakest power. Creating an unprecedented cultivation technique was inherently dangerous, especially when this cultivation technique was a top-notch one. In the astral space, the entire space was twisting and spinning because of the origin. It was like an angry sea that was constantly undulating. Qin Yu's consciousness was constantly sensing these fluctuations. His consciousness and the astral space fused as one. He could feel the changes in space and the origin from the inside. He could feel the entire flower paste space from the outside. What exactly is the flower paste space? Qin Yu's consciousness was in contact with the flower paste space. Waves of ancient aura invaded Qin Yu's consciousness, causing Qin Yu to become even calmer. Calm. His heart was calm. It was so calm that there were no fluctuations at all. As time passed, Qin Yu suddenly felt as though the entire astral space had become an embryo. The astral space was also him. He had become an embryo. As for the flower paste space, it was his mother's stomach. This was what Qin Yu was feeling. Although this feeling was strange and absurd, for some unknown reason, Qin Yu was completely enjoying the aura of the flower paste space. His consciousness even began to feel drowsy. In this sort of state, time continued to flow. A few months passed in the blink of an eye. After so many years of evolution, the origin had shrunk to an extremely small size. If one looked at it with their eyes, they would only see the origin become an extremely small black hole. Because the origin was too small, the surrounding space had completely collapsed. As for Qin Yu, he was still in that drowsy state. Even the face of Qin Yu's physical body had a peaceful, innocent smile on it. But in this sort of state, Qin Yu's consciousness was constantly flashing past one scene after another. Nebulas. Lu Xing stellar cores. Planets. Stars. The evolution of the universe was constantly flashing past Qin Yu's mind. The speed at which it flashed past was tens of millions of times faster than when Qin Yu was deliberately trying to deduce things. At the same time, when he reached the origin realm, his consciousness continued to deduce things. At this moment, the speed at which his consciousness was deducing things was hundreds of millions of times faster than in the past. This sort of thing happened while Qin Yu was still drowsy. Bang! It was as though a bolt of lightning had struck Qin Yu's consciousness, causing Qin Yu's consciousness to wake up. By the time Qin Yu woke up, the astral space had already evolved to the extreme. The origin had already shrunk to the extreme. If Qin Yu hadn't woken up, the origin might have exploded. Without anyone to guide it, the explosion of the origin would have caused Qin Yu's consciousness to collapse. The origin. So, this is one. This is the most primitive point. Qin Yu had a feeling of seeing the moon after the clouds and mist were parted. Although he did not understand the principle behind it, there was a voice roaring in Qin Yu's heart. That's right, that is the most correct, the most perfect evolution path. That was the path. At this moment, Qin Yu's physical body, which had been sitting cross-legged in the room, suddenly disappeared. Yes, Qin Yu's physical body had disappeared. In the astral space, Qin Yu's physical body had suddenly appeared. At this moment, Qin Yu's hands were spread open. His eyes were closed as he hovered in the astral space. At this moment, Qin Yu was immersed in a very mysterious and very special state. Break. Qin Yu's eyes were still closed, but he pointed at the origin with one hand. Like a peanut being split, the origin split into two halves with a cracking sound. The upper half of the origin transformed into a cyan stream of air. The cyan stream of air roared and surged out, instantly engulfing the entire astral space. The other half of the origin transformed into a turbid gray stream of air. The gray stream of air also wildly engulfed the entire astral space. In the astral space, the two streams of air began to entangle with each other. It seemed as though they were fighting. Qin Yu's eyes were still closed. A calm smile suddenly appeared on Qin Yu's face. He supported the sky with one hand and the ground with the other. He softly shouted, "Splitting heaven and earth." After exhaling, Qin Yu's eyes suddenly opened. Whoosh! The originally entangled cyan and gray streams of air seemed to have been guided. The cyan stream of air flew up, while the gray stream of air descended. Qin Yu's body was growing. It was constantly growing. The larger Qin Yu's body grew, the higher the cyan stream of air became. As time passed, the cyan stream of air finally condensed into a solid layer of cyan, while the gray stream of air formed a solid, boundless earth. In an instant, Qin Yu's entire body returned to its normal size. Looking up, the cyan sky was as pure as Celadon. Looking down at the ground below, the ground was boundlessly wide and extended. The area was so large that Qin Yu was simply unable to calculate it, because the area of the ground was constantly extending. Is this splitting heaven and earth? Qin Yu had only just recovered from that mysterious state. Seeing what he had done, Qin Yu felt a sense of disbelief. Chapter 519. The thick earth stretched as far as the eye could see, but Qin Yu could clearly sense the changes in the world he had created through his creation of the heavens and earth. The earth was constantly expanding, and the size of the world was constantly expanding. The size of this land is larger than 1,000 purple mystic planets combined. Qin Yu sighed. Stepping onto this land, Qin Yu's heart was extremely calm. This world belonged to him. This world was completely under his control. Since creation of the heavens and earth created a new universe, then the 10th level of the stellar transformations shall be the universe realm. Qin Yu decided on the name of the 10th level. The extremity of the heavens and earth of this world was, in fact, the outer membrane of the universe. This world was constantly absorbing the flower paste energy of the outside world, causing this world to constantly expand. I didn't expect it to evolve to such a level. Even my body has entered. Qin Yu was somewhat shocked. In the original universe, Qin Yu could only enter with his consciousness. He couldn't enter with his body. Who knew what would happen during the evolution process? Even his body had entered. This world is too monotonous. Qin Yu said. Suddenly, the universe world began to change. Rivers, mountains, swamps, oceans, lakes, deserts, trees, plants, flowers. The originally monotonous world began to change at an astonishing speed. As all of this happened, Qin Yu only smiled. When this world was successfully created, Qin Yu knew what sort of divine ability he had in this world. In his own universe world, Qin Yu could be said to be omnipotent. He could only be said to be omnipotent, but he wasn't omnipotent. Because this universe world was still growing, it hadn't reached a perfect stage. In this universe world, Qin Yu could only barely use its spatial powers. He couldn't use its temporal powers. However, this universe world was created by Qin Yu. Even if a God King was here, even if a God King controlled the spatial laws, as long as Qin Yu wanted to, the God King could forget about using the spatial powers here. Because Qin Yu was the master here. Qin Yu exclaimed in surprise. His entire body instantly disappeared, and when he reappeared, he was already in mid-air. At that moment, at this spot in the Qian Kuan world, a mysterious yellow gas was being produced. The speed at which it was produced wasn't considered fast, but after a while, a mysterious yellow gas the size of half a person was suspended in the air. When the Shenhuang Qi was born, Qin Yu, as the owner of this world, naturally had information about the Shenhuang Qi in his mind. The Shenhuang Qi was born when the world was created. Once the Shenhuang Qi is infused into a weapon, the toughness and defensive ability of the weapon will reach an extreme level. Qin Yu's face immediately bloomed into a smile. I didn't expect that this thing would be born when the Chenkuan world was formed. Hardness and defense. All right. Qin Yu extended his hand, and the divine spear Waning Snow appeared in his hand. In the divine realm, if one did not incorporate Grand Mist's spiritual energy, the strongest weapon that one could craft, a high-quality heavenly divine artifact, would generally possess a might equivalent to a third-rate grand mist spiritual treasure. As for the divine spear Waning Snow, although it did not possess grand mist spiritual energy, its might was comparable to a second-rate spiritual treasure. It was the craftsman god's proudest creation. Without incorporating grand mist spiritual energy, it was comparable to a second-rate spiritual treasure. If the divine spear Waning Snow were to fuse with the Shenhuang Qi that was born when the world was created, how powerful would it be? The divine spear Waning Snow floated out from Qin Yu's hand. After that, the divine spear Waning Snow started to float in the air. The lump of Shenhuang Qi the size of half a person had completely enveloped the divine spear Waning Snow. Qin Yu sensed the speed at which the Shenhuang Qi was assimilating with the divine spear Waning Snow. He sighed. What a slow assimilation speed. With this speed, who knows how long it would take for the divine spear Waning Snow to completely assimilate with it. Forget about it. Since I am not going to use the divine spear Waning Snow for the time being, I'll just let it slowly assimilate with the divine spear Waning Snow in this Chenkuan world. Qin Yu was able to sense the point of connection between the universal world and the Zhonglan's realm. The point of connection between the two worlds was the location where Qin Yu had disappeared. Qin Yu controlled the spatial energy and connected it to the location of the Zhonglan's realm. Qin Yu knew that once the universal world's spatial energy covered a certain area, he would be able to instantly arrive at that area. In the second layer space of the Zhonglan's realm, outside of Qin Yu's elegant courtyard, Kuro, Wu Lan and them had been quietly waiting here for several years now. In these several years, none of them had said a single word. They were only quietly waiting. Big brother, you must succeed. Kuro had a very serious expression on his face. His heart was very heavy. That was because, under normal circumstances, the speed of one's breakthrough from one level to another would be very short. However, Qin Yu had not come out for several years already. Fortunately, the Zhonglan's realm did not change much. At the very least, it meant that Qin Yu was still alive. A creak sound was heard. The door to the room opened. Kuro, Wu Lan, Wu He, Hong Yu, Lu Shuai and Uncle Fu all stood up at practically the same time. The six of them looked at each other in pleasant surprise and then immediately rushed toward Qin Yu's courtyard. Kuro took the lead. He was the first to push open the courtyard's door. Sure enough, he saw Qin Yu walking out from his room. At this moment, he had already walked into the courtyard. Haha. I've already successfully broken through. Seeing Kuro's worried expression, Qin Yu immediately said with a smile. Kuro and them immediately displayed relaxed smiles. As for Lu Shuai and Hong Yu, the two girls started chattering. I've already said that Lord Qin Yu would definitely succeed. Isn't it the same as what I said? I think that we should properly celebrate. In these past several years, I've been so scared by you all that I haven't even been able to breathe loudly. Hong Yu, who was dressed in pink, said while holding her chest. Good, let's properly celebrate. At this moment, Qin Yu's mood was also extremely good. After a lively meal, Qin Yu and Kuro chatted about a lot of things. Qin Yu had been outside for several hundred years, whereas Kuro had been in the second layer space of the Zhonglan's realm for several tens of thousands of years. Currently, Kuro's strength was much higher than before. However, he was still only at the mid-level deity level. Big brother, this breakthrough, how much has your strength increased? Kuro asked. Hearing Kuro's question, Qin Yu displayed a strange smile on his face. How much has his strength increased? Qin Yu himself also felt strange. When he was at the origin stage, he still possessed the origin energy. However, now that he had reached the universe stage, he could only use the spatial energy from his universal world. As for how powerful the spatial energy was, even Qin Yu himself did not know. Furthermore, would the spatial energy from his universal world be rejected by the divine realm? After all, the divine realm and Qin Yu's universal world were two different worlds. Other than this, there was another special aspect. A change had occurred in his Dantian space. The black hole that was originally in his Dantian space had actually disappeared. Qin Yu did not know when it had disappeared. However, He reckoned that it should have been during the time when his universal world was formed. Other than this, there was actually a lump of white pure flame in his dantian. When Qin Yu was at the origin stage, the true flame within his body was the black divine flame. However, when he was at the universe stage, his true flame was the white pure flame. Merely, Qin Yu did not expect that the white pure flame would actually run into his dantian. However, merely by looking at Qin Yu's body now, it was no different from an ordinary person's. Although he no longer had the black hole in his dantian, after establishing his universal world, Qin Yu had a soul connection with his universal world. It was so much that with a single thought, he would be able to directly teleport into the universal world. Compared to the Zhonglan's realm, I reckon that the universal world is much safer. Qin Yu judged in his heart. After all, if he were to hide in the Zhonglan's realm, the Zhonglan's realm would still be in its original location. At the very most, the Zhonglan's realm would turn into granules, rocks, and other objects. However, the universal world was a real world. Once he escaped into it, it would be impossible for others to find Qin Yu. If my enemies were to truly enter the universal world, then that would be the best. Qin Yu's face was filled with smiles. In the universal world, he would be invincible. Big brother, what are you thinking about? I'm asking you how much your strength has increased this time. Kuro said. Qin Yu woke up from his contemplation. He immediately smiled and said, "This time, my strength, my soul's level has increased slightly. I'm about to reach the peak of the high-level deity level. I'm only a step away from reaching the heavenly deity level." Peak. Kuro's eyes immediately opened wide. I've bitterly trained for over 200,000 years, and only then am I close to the peak of the mid-level deity level. Big brother, you don't seem to have trained much. Kuro felt a bit dispirited. The difference between their cultivation speed was too great. Qin Yu shook his head helplessly and said, "Before reaching the universe realm, I could only be considered as an ordinary high-level deity. Perhaps when I broke through to the universe realm, my soul had increased a bit. At that time, I did not sense it either." However, Qin Yu knew that the most difficult hurdle to reach from the peak of the high-level deity level to the heavenly deity level. There were countless people in the divine realm who were stuck at the peak of the high-level deity level and were unable to reach the heavenly deity level. "It seems that I will have to work even harder." Kuro nodded. He then smiled to Qin Yu and said, "Big brother, I'll be returning first." Qin Yu stood up and saw Kuro off. After Kuro left, Qin Yu stood outside the door and looked to the boundless Zhonglan's realm. This Zhonglan's realm originally belonged to Uncle Lan. Furthermore, it was Uncle Lan's #1 spiritual treasure. Compared to it, my universal world is merely unable to control time. Mainly, it's because my universal world has yet to mature. When I see Uncle Lan, I'll return the Zhonglan's realm to him. Chapter 521. Qin Yu's intention slightly moved. The location where Uncle Fu was at this moment automatically appeared in his mind. At this moment, several miles away from Qin Yu's courtyard, outside of a green and a red pavilion, Uncle Fu was chatting happily with Hong Yu and Lu Shuai. Seeing Uncle Fu's radiant smile, it was evident that they were chatting happily. Qin Yu took a step forward and disappeared from his courtyard. When he reappeared, he was already beside Uncle Fu and the others. "Master," when Uncle Fu saw Qin Yu, he immediately bowed respectfully. Hong Yu and Lu Shuai were beaming with smiles. With a crisp voice, they bowed and said, "Lord Qin Yu." Hong Yu and Lu Shuai already knew of Qin Yu's strength. In the divine realm where experts were as numerous as the clouds, they were extremely excited to be able to follow behind such a powerful expert. Qin Yu discovered that Hong Yu and Lu Shuai were actually also level 9 demon emperors. "Hong Yu, Lu Shuai, have you too sensed your divine tribulation?" Qin Yu asked curiously. Hong Yu's face was completely red. She promptly said, "Lord Qin Yu, Lu Shuai and I have reached level 9 demon emperor a long time ago. Although we have yet to sense our divine tribulation, according to how long our Fish Clan's companions have been at level 9 Demon Emperor, I reckon that it shouldn't be long now. Lu Shui opened her limpid eyes wide. She looked to Qin Yu and said, Lord Qin Yu, I have a matter that I wish to ask Lord Qin Yu for. Is it possible? Go ahead, Qin Yu said with a light smile. Qin Yu wanted to know exactly what these two girls wanted to do. Hee. We sisters were bullied by the other male fishes all day long when we were in that pond. It's mainly because we sisters are fish with very weak battle power. Lord Qin Yu, could you bring them in so that we can take our revenge? Lu Shui's eyes were emitting an excited radiance. Hong Yu also looked to Qin Yu with anticipation. Males. Qin Yu was stunned. How could he have caught so accurately? There were many fish in the pond. Back then, he had only casually caught 2. Who would have thought that they were all females, and the rest were all males? Okay, leave it to me. Qin Yu did not mind. Do you mind if I ask, how do you want to punish them? If there's no big grudge, a small punishment will do. Red Rain puffed out her chest and said confidently, Sir Qin Yu, don't worry. I won't take their lives, humph. Then she wrinkled her nose and snorted twice. Qin Yu shook his head and smiled. Ever since Hong Yu and Lu Shui arrived in the Zhonglan's realm, perhaps it was because there were too few women in the Zhonglan's realm, Wu Lan and Wu He, the 2 emperors of the Divine Realm's monstrous beasts, both treated Hong Yu and Lu Shui extremely well. Presumably, when he brought those fishes in, Wu Lan and the others would definitely help him teach them a lesson. Hong Yu, Lu Shui, the 2 of you can return and rest first. Uncle Fu and I will be leaving the Zhonglan's realm, Qin Yu said with a light smile. Yes, Sir Qin Yu. Lu Shui and Hong Yu bowed respectfully and then returned to their own pavilions. Uncle Fu narrowed his eyes with a smile. Master, Hong Yu and Lu Shui, these 2 girls are extremely lively. In these days, I've seen that even young Master Kuro would often have more smiles on his face. Amen, there are too few people in the Zhonglan's realm. Hong Yu and Lu Shui's lively nature had indeed made everyone's mood a lot better. Seeing their lively and eccentric appearances, my mood also relaxed a bit. Qin Yu looked to Uncle Fu. Uncle Fu, let's go out now. My formation array experiment has yet to end. Yes, Master. Uncle Fu nodded respectfully. Just like that, Qin Yu and Uncle Fu disappeared from the Zhonglan's realm. The current Mount Bewitch Yu was incomparably desolate. It had been completely burned by the extremely silent heavenly flames. The entire mountain was bare. Those burned stones had a gray and black color on them. Many of the stones had cracked open from the burning. The trees had all turned into ashes. Those large craters were also clearly visible. On this bare and desolate Mount Bewitch Yu, Qin Yu and Uncle Fu suddenly appeared. Qin Yu and Uncle Fu looked to their surroundings. Their faces were filled with disbelief and shock. Master, this place. Uncle Fu's brows were completely creased. Qin Yu looked to the extremely desolate Mount Bewitch Yu before him. In his mind, scenes of the past appeared. Beautiful mountains and limpid waters, rumbling waterfalls, clear ponds and animals running through the mountains and forests. This is Mount Bewitch Yu? Qin Yu looked at the rocks that were split open by the flames. Suddenly, his gaze shifted to his residence on Mount Bewitch Yu. Like a sharp arrow, Qin Yu shot toward his original residence. As for Uncle Fu, he was like a gust of wind. He floated up and down the mountain and easily arrived at his original residence. This is the pond where Hong Yu and Lu Shui used to be. Qin Yu looked to the large crater. The shape of the pond was still there. However, the pond water and those fishes had all disappeared. Qin Yu felt a burst of anger. Ever since he started experimenting with the formation array, Qin Yu did not have any killing intent toward the Black Dragon Pond. Most of the time, he would let people off whenever he could. For example, those who were trapped in the illusion formation at the beginning, didn't they still manage to leave alive? Even for the heavenly deity Xiong He, Qin Yu still did not kill him. When he told Xiong He to kowtow, it was merely a joke. However, in the end, Xiong-hei really kowtowed. Qin Yu did not mind at all. In the eyes of the current Qin Yu, this was nothing more than a game. Did he really have to kill Xiong-hei? As long as he took out the godly spear Waning Snow, Qin Yu would be able to easily kill Xiong-hei. After all, Qin Yu's control over space was on par with Xiong-hei. However, with Waning Snow, his attack power far surpassed Xiong-hei's. Master, Hong Yu and Lu Shui said that you should. Uncle Fu stopped speaking after saying this much. Qin Yu started to frown. It was likely that Hong Yu and Lu Shui still did not know that the fishes that had bullied and played with them in the past had already been burned to death. Master, there is no need for you to be merciful and lenient in the divine realm. You spared their lives, yet they burned down this mount bewitch you. You should demonstrate your power now. Uncle Fu said softly. Uncle Fu knew very well that although his master could not be said to be merciful and lenient, he was still not ruthless enough. If it was the craftsman god Che-Ho Yuan, if anyone dared to disrespect him, he would have killed them long ago. Why would he care about other things? This was what it meant to be a superior. The higher one's cultivation was, the more one would understand one thing. The heavenly Tao was heartless. Whether one killed or not, one's character was treacherous and kind. None of these things would affect one's comprehension of the heavenly Tao. All paths were interconnected. Of the three great ascender powers of the divine realm, the Azure Sea and Mount Blood Demon were both famous for their massacres. In fact, massacres were easier to increase one's strength and easier to approach the great Tao. Master, although it is still uncertain which of the 8 great families Zhongli belongs to, Master must possess sufficient strength and status in order to obtain the acknowledgement of the 8 great families. As for now, it is time for you to make a name for yourself. Uncle Fu advised. The divine realm was a place where the strong were respected and where strength reigned supreme. No one would pity a merciful and lenient person. Humans could only rely on themselves. Similarly, one's status could only be fought for by oneself. One's dignity could only be defended by oneself. Uncle Fu, let's go to the Black Dragon Pool. Qin Yu said coldly. He turned his head and looked toward the north. The Black Dragon Pool was located several thousand li to the north. This time, Qin Yu finally decided. The current him did not possess the qualifications to obtain the acknowledgement of the 8 great families. However, Xiao-hei, the Black Dragon Pool, dared to look down on him. Don't force me to use Waning Snow. Qin Yu thought to himself. The divine spear Waning Snow was originally a second-rate spiritual treasure. Now, it had started to absorb the dark and yellow energy. Although it had only absorbed a small portion of it, Qin Yu was able to clearly sense the increase in power of the divine spear Waning Snow. Yes, Master. Uncle Fu's face immediately became filled with excitement. Uncle Fu felt as if he had returned to the days when he was together with Che-Ho Yuan. When they were unhindered in the divine realm, no one dared to disrespect them. Qin Yu and Uncle Fu left Mount Bewitch Yu one after the other. When they left Mount Bewitch Yu, Qin Yu immediately saw the shattered Mount Bewitch Yu steel. Qin Yu was flying a foot above the ground. As for Uncle Fu, he was flying forward gracefully. In terms of speed, not to mention Qin Yu, even high-level heavenly deities were inferior to Uncle Fu. The two of them were relatively fast. In merely 2 hours, they had already arrived at the core region of the Black Dragon Pool. This Black Dragon Pool is truly beautiful. Qin Yu raised his head to look at the unending mountain range before him and said with a light smile. On the way there, Qin Yu had already discovered a lot of people from the Black Dragon Pool. Merely, Qin Yu and Uncle Fu were extremely fast. Thus, they managed to easily arrive outside of the Black Dragon Pool without disturbing those people. Uncle Fu pointed to the mountain range in the distance and said, Master, the Black Dragon Pool is located in the canyon in the center of the tallest mountains. Within the canyon is a large lake called the Black Dragon Pool. Beside the Black Dragon Pool are 4 palaces. In the center is the Black Dragon Palace. The 3 palaces beside it are the palaces of those 3 low-level heavenly deities. There's no need to bother about those nobodies. Let's directly proceed to those palaces. After Qin Yu finished saying those words, his speed reached his fastest speed. Like a ghost, he rapidly entered the canyon along the undulating mountain range. As for Uncle Fu, he easily followed behind Qin Yu. Traveling through the mountain forest, Qin Yu and Uncle Fu arrived outside of the canyon without disturbing anyone. They stood on top of a mountain outside of the canyon. Qin Yu was able to see the canyon in the center of the mountains with a single glance. This canyon was extremely large. It possessed a circumference of about 100 to 200 miles. As for that black dragon pool, it occupied over half of it. Such a large canyon was truly rarely seen. Uncle Fu, from today on, I shall disguise myself as an expert proficient in using flames in front of others. The true flames within my body have already reached the level of white pure flames. Using flames is sufficient. Qin Yu said with a smile. After reaching the universe realm, the true flames within his body had turned into white pure flames. This had caused the might of the spiritual treasure refining flame wristband that Qin Yu used to increase. The might of the refining flame wristband was dependent on the degree of refinement and the level of the true flames within the user's body. Uncle Fu nodded in agreement. Master, you're now able to use black divine flames that can cover the entire sky. As for white pure flames, I reckon that you'll be able to use white pure flames in a range of several tens of meters. Furthermore, you'll also be able to use a very small amount of void flames. The flames that Old Master used back then were also at this level. Cheho Yuan was a high-level heavenly deity. The true flames within his body were also white pure flames. Even though he possessed the refining flame wristband, he would at most be able to use a very small amount of void flames. However, even though it was a very small amount, it was still sufficient to refine artifacts. Flames, black divine flames, white pure flames, void flames. The void flames were the true flames within the bodies of God King level experts. The spiritual treasure refining flame wristband, refined from 9 purple origin flame beads, was already sufficient to allow a heavenly deity expert to use a very small amount of void flames. Hey, who are you? How come I've never seen you before? Suddenly, a man in the canyon saw Qin Yu who was above the canyon. He immediately shouted at Qin Yu. Qin Yu smiled. Like a great rock spreading its wings, he glided through the air above the canyon and arrived outside the 4 palaces. Qin Yu's hands began to form one hand seal after another. Countless rays of light began to float in the air above the 4 palaces. Immediately, the people of the Black Dragon Pool within the canyon began to clamor. Countless deities began to gather from all directions. Heavenly deity! It's a heavenly deity! Madam, let's quickly hide far away. We cannot get involved in a battle between heavenly deities. A youth pulled a woman beside him and immediately wanted to escape far away. I've never seen this heavenly deity before. He's not a heavenly deity from Mount Cold Gold, nor is he a heavenly deity from Mount Sancha. Since when did our Black Dragon Pool have a new enemy? A bold old man said in confusion. That seems to be a heavenly deity from Mount Bewitchu. A youth from the nearly 10,000 people that went to Mount Bewitchu last time said. There were 3 bandit groups outside of Yuchi City. One was from the Black Dragon Pool, one was from Mount Cold Gold, and one was from Mount Sancha. These 3 bandit groups frequently fought against each other. In the midst of the clamor, the 3 heavenly deities of the Black Dragon Pool, Xionghe, Meiji, and Taoist Lu Su, all ran out from their palaces. Upon seeing Qin Yu in the air, Meiji and Taoist Lu Su's expressions both changed. As for Xionghe, he immediately displayed an angry expression. Qin Yu, you actually dared to come to our Black Dragon Pool. You truly have guts. Xionghe extended his hand. That thick spiked club appeared in his hand. Qin Yu had also finished setting up the hand seals. Immediately, a black cover appeared from the sky. The cover was very large. It covered the 4 palaces. Immediately, countless black flames appeared from the black cover. A simple trapping formation supplemented by divine flames. Qin Yu said with a light smile. Xiong Hei, you all burned down my Mount Bewitch You. Today, I shall burn down your black dragon pool. Chapter 522. The Black Dome covered the 4 palaces, and even covered an area of 5 kilometers around the 4 palaces. Black divine flames rose from the Black Dome, and countless black divine flames attacked the 4 palaces and the people inside them like poisonous snakes. There were several thousand people covered by the cover, and among them were the 3 heavenly deities. These thousands of people were all enduring within the divine fire. They were all anxiously trying to find a way out of this trapping array. With the strength of these deities, they were still able to endure within the divine fire for a period of time. Meiji, Taoist Lu Su and Xiong Hei were together. In this array formation, there are divine flames everywhere. Moreover, the color of these divine flames is so dense. Meiji frowned. Her body was surrounded by a layer of green divine energy. Under the protection of the heavenly god's power, the divine fire couldn't do anything to her. Taoist Lu Su and Xiong Hei were the same. There are a lot of heavenly deities in the divine realm that are proficient in using flame attacks. This Qin Yu actually used a formation array to release this many divine flames. Furthermore, judging from the intensity of the divine flames, their power is also extremely great. Said Taoist Lu Su with a gasp of admiration. Black God Fire. However, there were differences in the power of God Fire. Would the high-level deity's true fire be the same as the low-level deity's true fire? Black was also divided into shades of gray, light black, black, and thick black. Lu Su, don't speak any more nonsense. Quickly break this formation array and let us out. Said Xiong Hei in dissatisfaction. Taoist Lu Su could be considered as the #1 expert in the formation arrays of the Black Dragon Pool. He shook his head and said, "In order to break through this formation array, I would need at least an hour to properly observe it. However, if it is merely to exit the formation array, it would not be a difficult matter. In that case, quickly get out of the formation." Xiong Hei directly shouted. Xiong Hei was disinclined to care about the life and death of the other several thousand people. To the Black Dragon Pool, the loss of a few thousand people was nothing. At this moment, what Xiong Hei wanted to do the most was to get out of this formation array and then kill Qin Yu. Good. In that case, I will quickly disperse. Taoist Lu Su's expression suddenly changed. It was not only him, even Meiji and Xiong Hei's expressions changed. They hurriedly dodged. 2 pure white fireballs, each half the height of a human, shot towards them at high speed. Just as the 3 of them dodged, the 2 white fireballs brushed past them. After flying for several dozen meters, they disappeared into the countless black divine flames. It's white pure flames. Last time at Mount Bewitch You, that Qin Yu had also used white pure flames to attack me. This Qin Yu is extremely proficient in the use of flames. Quickly, let's leave. Xiong Hei grew anxious. Meiji also looked to Taoist Lu Su anxiously. Big Brother Lu, quickly bring us away from this formation array. These white pure flames are too powerful. Within the array formation, the black divine flames covered every area. Even the white pure flames could only barely be seen when they were several dozen meters away from their bodies. If they were not careful, the white pure flames would burn them. All right, wait a moment. Taoist Lu Su also took a deep breath. He then formed several hand seals in succession. Immediately, runes, seals and symbols appeared on the black cover. Taoist Lu Su began to carefully inspect them. Meiji and Xiong Hei also did not dare to urge and disturb Taoist Lu Su. They could only wait anxiously. All right, remember, follow behind me. The space surrounding Taoist Lu Su started to distort. The space within a range of 10 meters around him started to ripple. Meiji and Xiong Hei followed behind Taoist Lu Su. The 3 of them rapidly proceeded forward. After walking for a while, Taoist Lu Su would send out several divine seals to inspect the surroundings. rumble. At this moment, the final palace with the strongest defense, the Black Dragon Palace, had also collapsed. Under the burning of the black divine flames, the barrier protecting the palace had been completely destroyed. The black pillars of the Black Dragon Palace, the golden steps, had all been turned into ashes by the black divine flames. As for the Lord Bear Palace and the other two palaces, they had already been burned to death by the black divine flames from the very beginning. Within the black divine flames, there were still over 1,000 people struggling. As for the mid-level deities and low-level deities, they were only able to persist for a short period of time before being burned to ashes. These high-level deities were able to persist for a relatively long time. Although their divine energy was being consumed very quickly, their bodies were extremely valiant. As time passed, they were gradually unable to persist any longer. After persisting for a long time, a high-level deity whose divine energy had already been completely consumed was finally unable to persist any longer after being burned by the black divine flames for a cup of tea's worth of time. Like a stone that had been burned dry, his body cracked open. Blood flowed out from his body. The black divine flames rushed into his body and instantly turned his internal organs into ashes. His head was also burned to death. Second Brother Yang. A black-clothed middle-aged man beside him roared in grief and indignation. The dark golden-colored divine energy within this black-clothed middle-aged man's body was unceasingly resisting the black divine flames. However, the black divine flames continued to burn him. Even though his strength had reached the peak of the high-level deity level, his divine energy had already nearly dried up. Passing the divine tribulation was merely a matter of resisting the black divine flames for several breaths of time. Furthermore, at that time, the black divine flames were still not that powerful. Yet now, the black divine flames had already burned for half an hour. Furthermore, the black divine flames were much more powerful. Even a high-level deity would not be able to withstand such a long period of burning. Second Brother Yang, Lord Xiong-Hei actually decided to ignore us. That middle-aged man's heart was filled with grief and indignation. He knew that he would soon be unable to withstand the black divine flames. On the eve of his death, he clearly remembered that he and his second brother Yang had spent all these years in the Black Dragon Pool. They had killed, robbed, and seized some of the treasures of the Ascenders. Second Brother Yang, it was usually us who killed others and robbed others. Never would I have expected that we would be burned alive today. The middle-aged man took a long sigh, and at this moment, a lump of white pure flame was rapidly shot toward them from behind. The middle-aged man did not even have the time to dodge. His head was directly vaporized by the white pure flame. In the entire Great Formation Array, other than the omnipresent black divine flames, there was actually an extremely small amount of white pure flames. When Taoist Lu Su led Meiji and Xiong-Hei out of the Great Formation Array, there were less than 100 people left alive in the Great Formation Array. Miserable screams and furious curses were unceasingly heard. Some were cursing the heavens, some were cursing the person who set up the Formation Array, some were cursing Xiong-Hei. The majority of these people did not even know Qin Yu's name. Thus, they could only curse him as the bastard who set up the Formation Array. Right after Xiong-Hei, Taoist Lu Su and Meiji exited the Great Formation Array, they felt the cool and refreshing wind of the ravine. Xiong-Hei, you bastard! Miserable curses were still being heard from the Great Formation Array. Although the number of people cursing Xiong-Hei was decreasing, there were still people cursing Xiong-Hei. Xiong-Hei turned around and looked at the cover of the Black Divine Flames. He coldly humphed. Without the strength to escape, so what if you're dead? What does that have to do with me? Xiong-Hei did not care about those people at all. Suddenly, Xiong-Hei turned around and looked toward the direction where Qin Yu was originally located. Meiji and Taoist Lu Su also looked toward that direction. At this moment, Qin Yu was standing in the air. His black gown was fluttering in the wind. Xiong-Hei, listen carefully. Last time in the trapping array, I spared your life. It's one thing for you to not be grateful, but you actually dared to burn down my Mount Bewitch You. Today, I have come to let you know that since I was able to trap you once, I am also able to trap you a second time. Furthermore, Since I am able to trap you, I am also able to kill you. Qin Yu's gaze was cold and chilly. Qin Yu, humph, you let me go, yet you still want me to be grateful to you? Haha, you idiot, as long as I catch you, I will definitely kill you. Xiong Hei laughed out loud. Qin Yu sneered in his heart. This Xiong Hei actually believed that he no longer had the ability to catch him and kill him? Immediately after, Qin Yu pointed to a formation array with a circumference of a mile below. You've also seen this killing array before. It's the fire attribute killing array from last time on Mount Bewitch You. This formation array has already been improved by me. If you have the ability, then try to break through it again. As he said that, Qin Yu had already flown into the formation array. After Qin Yu flew into the formation array's attack did not start. Earlier, when Xiong Hei and them were trapped, it was sufficient for Qin Yu to set up this killing array. This killing array was easily set up for the second time. The speed of setting it up was also much faster. If you have the ability, then come in. I will wait for you in this great formation array, Qin Yu said with a light smile. Xiong Hei looked to the great formation array before him. His eyes narrowed. Taoist Lu Su promptly said, Big brother Xiong Hei, this formation array is a fire attribute great offensive formation array. Its attack power is definitely much stronger than the trapping array from earlier. The inside of this formation array ought to be completely filled with white pure flames. I know. I've already tasted it the last time. Xiong Hei shouted in a low voice. Xiong Hei still remembered the scene of him being surrounded by white pure flames that covered all directions. Had it not been for the formation array collapsing at the final moment, he might have already lost his little life. Having suffered a loss once, how could Xiong Hei possibly dare to enter it again? As for Qin Yu, who was inside the great formation array, he was looking at Xiong Hei. Qin Yu had already guessed that this Xiong Hei would likely not dare to break through the formation array again. The reason why he set up this formation array was merely to frighten the black dragon pool. Qin Yu, if you have the ability, then come out and fight me to the death. Xiong Hei held his spiked club with one hand and roared. At the same time, Xiong Hei sent a divine awareness voice transmission to Taoist Lu Su and Mei Ji. Lu Su, Mei Ji, when that Qin Yu exits the great formation array and fights against me, the two of you are to seize the opportunity to surround him together and kill him together. One-on-one. Xiong Hei had already attempted to do so. With Qin Yu's flying agility, it was simply impossible for Xiong Hei to catch up to him. Even if Qin Yu did not attack him, it was likely that Xiong Hei would still be trapped by Qin Yu's formation array in the end. Thus, they could only surround and attack Xiong Hei with 3 people. Big brother Xiong Hei, please rest assured. We will definitely seize the opportunity to surround and kill him, said Taoist Lu Su via divine awareness voice transmission. Mei Ji also agreed. Big brother Xiong, my poisonous soul hook is not something to be trifled with. Xiong Hei had a face filled with confidence. He turned to Qin Yu and shouted, Qin Yu, what's wrong? You don't dare to come out? With a smile on his face, Qin Yu flew out from the formation array. He extended his hand and a scarlet-colored sword appeared in his hand. A drop of blood appeared on the tip of Qin Yu's finger and dripped onto the scarlet-colored sword. Back then in the Bewitching God Temple's Artifacts Palace, Qin Yu had obtained 68 heavenly divine artifacts. In the courtyard of the Bewitching God Temple, he had also obtained a row of low-quality heavenly divine artifacts. Among them, the heavenly divine artifacts from the Artifacts Palace possessed slightly stronger attack power. Among the 68 heavenly divine artifacts, 4 of them were high-quality heavenly divine artifacts. Among the 4 high-quality heavenly divine artifacts, there was a sword-shaped heavenly divine artifact called Scarlet Blood. Divine Sword Scarlet Blood was scarlet-red in color. It was a divine sword of the fire attribute and possessed the special effect of sharpness. Generally, only high-quality heavenly divine artifacts would possess sharpness. Only a small number of mid-quality heavenly divine artifacts would possess sharpness. The difference in special effects determined the might of the heavenly divine artifacts. The special effect of sharpness was a relatively good one. As for the divine spear Waning Snow, it was more powerful. It had two special effects: body-shattering and soul-devouring. Soul-devouring was something that only powerful numinous treasures could do. You have a heavenly divine artifact? Xiong-Hei opened his eyes wide in shock. He looked at the divine sword Scarlet Blood in Qin Yu's hand. With a light smile on his face, Qin Yu nodded. This sword is a heavenly divine artifact. Its name is Scarlet Blood. Xiong-Hei, the reason why I fought against you last time was merely for the sake of testing out my formation techniques. Since you want to have a life and death battle with me, I'll also use a heavenly divine artifact to give you enough face. Qin Yu did not dare to mention that the divine sword Scarlet Blood was a high-quality heavenly divine artifact at all. Qin Yu was worried that this Xiong-Hei would be scared away. With a powerful weapon, one would be able to fight those of a higher level. Big brother Xiong, be careful. Mei Ji and Lu Su were a bit nervous. They were no longer as relaxed as before. In the Black Dragon Pool, only Lord Black Dragon and Xiong-Hei possessed heavenly divine artifacts. Xiong-Hei's heavenly divine artifact was bestowed to him by Lord Black Dragon. As for Mei Ji and Lu Su, they did not possess any heavenly divine artifacts at all. From this, one could tell how precious a heavenly divine artifact was. There was no need to even mention a high-quality heavenly divine artifact whose might was comparable to a third-rated spiritual treasure. Even the 8 great clans, without sufficient strength and status, would not be able to obtain a high-quality heavenly divine artifact. Scared? Qin Yu said with a light smile. At this moment, there were several 100,000 people surrounding the ravine. More than half of the people in the Black Dragon Pool were gathered at various locations to watch this battle. Scared? Xiong-Hei sneered. Come. Xiong-Hei, who was close to 3 meters tall, held that spiked club in his hand. He was emitting an astonishingly domineering aura. Qin Yu took a glance at Taoist Lu Su. I remember that you're called Taoist Lu Su. Earlier, you led Xiong-Hei and Mei Ji to escape from the great formation array that I had set up. Thus, you ought to be proficient in formation arrays. You were the one who set up the Mount Bewitchu, right? Precisely. Taoist Lu Su said with a smile. Motherfucker, enough of your bullshit. Xiong-Hei cursed angrily. He streaked across the sky like a lightning bolt and arrived before Qin Yu with a single strike of his club. Qin Yu effortlessly moved his body and gracefully streaked across the sky in an arc. His movement was so graceful and nimble that the surrounding people were unable to refrain themselves from cheering. As for Qin Yu, he had already arrived in the sky above Taoist Lu Su and Mei Ji. Mei Ji and Taoist Lu Su glanced at each other. They said to each other through divine awareness voice transmission, "A good opportunity." At this moment, Xiong-Hei was roaring angrily. With boundless might, as if he was going to tear apart the space, he once again rushed before Qin Yu. His spiked club that was flickering with an ice-cold radiance smashed down at Qin Yu's head. At the same time, Mei Ji and Taoist Lu Su also soared into the sky. Whoa! The several 100,000 spectators burst into an uproar. 3 against 1? Qin Yu discovered this scene with his divine awareness. However, a smile appeared on his face. His body flew backwards. At the same time, the divine sword Scarlet Blood in his hand streaked across the sky. Like a waterfall, countless sword silhouettes streaked across the spiked club in front of him. Break! Qin Yu lightly shouted. Xiong-Hei's complexion immediately turned as pale as paper. He saw that the nearly 4-meter-long mace was actually split into 2. The nearly 1-meter-long end that was cut off fell from the sky and smashed into the ground with a pang. The several 100,000 spectators in the ravine of the Black Dragon Pool grew completely silent. Chapter 523. The leader of the Black Dragon Pool, Lord Black Dragon, had already disappeared. Usually, the 3 heavenly deities were in charge of the entire Black Dragon Pool. Among the 3 heavenly deities, only Xiong Hei possessed a low-quality heavenly divine artifact. The other two did not possess any heavenly divine artifacts at all. Usually, Mei Ji and Lu Su would also envy Xiong Hei for possessing a heavenly divine artifact. In the eyes of everyone in the Black Dragon Pool, heavenly divine artifacts were indestructible. However, today, before the eyes of several 100,000 people, that indestructible low-quality heavenly divine artifact Spiked Club Mountain Crusher was sliced in half by that scarlet-red sword. The 1-meter-long end smashed onto the ground. However, it was as if it had smashed onto Xiong Hei's heart. How could this be? Xiong Hei was completely stunned. His complexion had turned deathly pale. Taoist Lu Su and Mei Ji, who were originally planning to surround and kill Qin Yu, also suddenly stopped. The two of them flew over to Xiong Hei. The two of them looked to the divine sword Scarlet Blood in Qin Yu's hand with a gaze filled with shock. They were scared stiff. The entire ravine of the Black Dragon Pool grew silent for a long time. Suddenly, a thunderous clamor sounded. Everyone became excited. Their gazes were all blazing as they looked to the divine sword Scarlet Blood in Qin Yu's hand. To be able to slice apart a heavenly divine artifact, it's most definitely an even more powerful heavenly divine artifact. The deities below were all discussing with one another. These deities only knew that heavenly divine artifacts were the most powerful. With their status, they simply did not have the qualifications to know about the existence of Grand Mist spiritual treasures. Thus, they determined that the divine sword Scarlet Blood in Qin Yu's hand was a heavenly divine artifact even more powerful than the Spiked Club Mountain Crusher. Times, strong wind whistled through the ravine. Qin Yu's long hair fluttered in the wind. Holding the divine sword Scarlet Blood in his hand, Qin Yu looked to the three people before him. "Are you scared?" Qin Yu said with a light smile. The gazes that Taoist Lu Su and Mei Ji looked to Qin Yu and the divine sword Scarlet Blood with were both filled with shock and fear. As for Xiong Hei, his entire body was slightly shivering as he looked to the spiked club in his hand that was already a section shorter. The divine sword Scarlet Blood's divine sword Scarlet Blood. However, in terms of strength, it was still a bit more powerful than a divine artifact. "If you're not going to make a move, then I'm going to." Qin Yu wielded the divine sword Scarlet Blood with one hand. Suddenly, the surface of the divine sword Scarlet Blood ignited with a layer of white flames. As a fire attribute heavenly deity artifact, it was capable of using flames to attack people. The hearts of Mei Ji and the others trembled when they saw the white pure flames. The hundreds of thousands of people below held their breaths again. This was a battle that was worth showing off to others in the future, even if they were just watching from the side. Mei Ji, Lu Su, go all out. Mei Ji, now, we can only see if that move of yours will succeed. If it doesn't, we can only go against Lord Black Dragon's orders. Xiong Hei said via divine sense voice transmission. Taoist Lu Su and Mei Ji both nodded. They didn't want to ask Lord Black Dragon for help unless it was absolutely necessary. If they wanted to contact Lord Black Dragon, they had to do it at a specific time. If they suddenly disturbed Lord Black Dragon now, they wouldn't be able to bear Lord Black Dragon's anger. Mei Ji and Taoist Lu Su's figures suddenly moved. Like the wings of a butterfly, they naturally drifted to either side. A jade-green light immediately appeared on Taoist Lu Su and Mei Ji's bodies. "Yah!" A furious roar. The muscles all over Xiong Hei's body suddenly expanded. Hiss hiss. Sounds were being heard unceasingly. His muscles that had expanded by 2 to 3 times were blood-red in color. Furthermore, Xiong Hei's bones were also emitting a sound that could make one's teeth turn cold. His body slowly lengthened. His muscles expanded. Xiong Hei was still roaring. The corners of his eyes were ripped open. The blue veins on his face were like numerous blue snakes swimming about on his face. They were completely protruding. "They're all going all out." Qin Yu swept his gaze all around. He had an excited expression on his face. It had been a long time since he last fought. Taoist Lu Su stopped in the air to his left. Taoist Lu Su held a green willow branch-like toy in his hand. His eyes were jade green. He appeared to be very peculiar. Mei Ji stopped in the air to his right. At this moment, a dark black battle armor had appeared on Mei Ji's body. Her eyes were ice cold. She no longer had the slightest bit of her previous seductive appearance. Xiong Hei clasped his hands together and grabbed onto the damaged spiked club. His biceps bulged high. His veins were clearly visible. Ha! With a loud shout, Xiong Hei turned into a blur. In practically a snap of a finger, he had traveled a distance of 100 meters and arrived before Qin Yu. His spiked club was directly smashed toward Qin Yu. At the same moment, Mei Ji and Taoist Lu Su's attacks had both arrived. Taoist Lu Su immediately released 10 soft green willow branches from his hands. They were directly sent toward Qin Yu to bind him. As for Mei Ji, she held a very ordinary high-quality divine artifact longsword and hacked it toward Qin Yu. Taoist Lu Su, what a strange attacking method. Qin Yu's body twisted strangely. He actually twisted a distance of nearly 20 centimeters and dodged the attack of the spiked club. At the same time, he moved the divine sword Scarlet Blood in his hand. A scarlet sword silhouette soared into the sky. Like a mirage, it was about to split Xiong Hei's body into two. Xiong Hei's eyes were immediately opened wide. He suddenly changed the trajectory of his spiked club from smashing to blocking. At the same time, he flew back. PFFF, even though he was vomiting blood to change the trajectory of his spiked club with all his might, even though he was flying back with all his might, the divine sword Scarlet Blood still managed to cut off a meter-long section of the spiked club. It then continued to hack at Xiong Hei's body. Fortunately, Xiong Hei was slightly obstructed by the spiked club. Thus, his little life was saved. A large wound appeared on Xiong Hei's stomach. His intestines were about to be exposed. Jade green-colored heavenly divine energy immediately started to circulate around Xiong Hei's body. In a situation where he was recklessly consuming his heavenly divine energy, his injuries were healed in merely a moment. Qin Yu sighed in his heart. Had it not been for the fact that Mei Ji and Taoist Lu Su were attacking him, he would have been able to take advantage of this opportunity to kill Xiong Hei. Qin Yu dodged several times. However, this Taoist Lu Su's technique was actually not inferior to his in the slightest. A soft green willow branch had wrapped around Qin Yu's arm. At this moment, Qin Yu's arm was unable to move in the slightest. What the hell is this? Qin Yu looked to this green willow branch in shock. This Taoist Lu Su's attack was truly too strange. Furthermore, this green willow branch's toughness and strength were both extremely strong. At the same time, the other 9 green willow branches also started to violently attack Qin Yu's head. It was as if they were going to wrap around Qin Yu's head. Not only that, at this moment, that Mei Ji had also arrived. Mei Ji and Taoist Lu Su were both bursting forth with excitement. Even Xiong Hei, who had retreated to the side to heal his injuries, also saw the hope of victory. You want to kill me with just this? Qin Yu sighed in his heart. He displayed a light smile on his face. Whoosh! Qin Yu's entire body suddenly emitted white flames. The green willow branch that originally wrapped around Qin Yu's arm was instantly burned to ashes. Against the white pure flames, even the green willow branch was unable to withstand it. Other than that, the 9 green willow branches that were trying to wrap around Qin Yu's head also flew back. Even if I told you to attack, you wouldn't dare to attack. Qin Yu took a glance at Taoist Lu Su. At the same time, Qin Yu completely ignored Mei Ji's attack. Instead, he rapidly chased after Taoist Lu Su. Let's kill Taoist Lu Su first. Mei Ji chased after Qin Yu. Qin Yu chased after Taoist Lu Su. Taoist Lu Su fled. How could one play with fire to such a degree? The white pure flames are the true flames within one's body. How could he suddenly release so much of them? Taoist Lu Su was completely unable to understand. Qin Yu laughed in his heart. Taoist Lu Su, how did you know? That of the 2 weapons that I am currently using, the most powerful one is the refining flame wristband. Although the divine sword Scarlet Blood appeared to be powerful, it was only comparable to a third-rated spiritual treasure. As for the refining flame wristband, it was a second-rated spiritual treasure. Once the white pure flames were released, even heavenly deity-level experts would not be able to withstand it. Qin Yu saw how fast this Taoist Lu Su was running away and then saw that Mei Ji dared to chase after him. He sneered. Immediately, without any warning, Qin Yu suddenly stopped and then slashed out a sword strike behind him. Like a curtain, the sword shadow tore through the vast sky. Like tofu, that high-quality divine sword was sliced in half. Mei Ji's eyes were filled with shock. At this moment of life and death, Mei Ji suddenly turned her head. A sword shadow had sliced Mei Ji's body in half. Fortunately, Mei Ji had turned her head at the last moment. Thus, her head was not sliced in half. Mei Ji's head rapidly escaped. After that, a large amount of jade-green-colored heavenly divine energy emerged from her head. She once again formed a body. Mei Ji's complexion was extremely pale. To form a body, she had consumed an enormous amount of heavenly divine energy. The several 100,000 troops of the Black Dragon Pool below were all stunned. Their 3 heavenly deities were actually beaten to such a miserable state by a single person. Xiong Hei's heavenly divine artifact was sliced in half. Furthermore, his stomach was sliced open. Mei Ji's body was sliced in half. Her little life was nearly lost. Even Taoist Lu Su, who appeared to be in the best condition, was forced to flee after being chased by Qin Yu. Weak. In an absolute weak state. No wonder Senior Craftsman God is so respected in the divine realm. A single high-quality heavenly divine artifact is already this powerful. It's even capable of allowing me, a high-level deity who doesn't even possess heavenly divine energy, to easily defeat 3 low-level heavenly deities. Qin Yu felt even more of the revered status of artifact craftsman. Actually, it was not like what Qin Yu had imagined. The reason why Qin Yu was able to defeat these 3 heavenly deities was because of the assistance from Lu Xing's tear. It allowed his spatial control to be on the same level as the 3 low-level heavenly deities. If he did not possess the assistance from Lu Xing's tear, then even if he possessed a high-quality heavenly divine artifact, it would still be impossible for him to defeat low-level heavenly deities. After all, high-level deities were incapable of even flying. Qin Yu was surprised to discover one thing. Taoist Lu Su, Mei Ji and Xiong Hei were actually not discouraged in the slightest. They were still filled with fighting spirit. Could it be that they still have some sort of trump card that they have yet to use? Qin Yu was unable to refrain himself from becoming alert. If the 3 heavenly deities did not possess any sort of trump card, then it was likely that they would have already fled for their lives. Xiong Hei, Taoist Lu Su and Mei Ji coldly stared at Qin Yu. Ha! Xiong Hei shouted loudly. His shout was like an order. The 3 of them immediately rushed to attack Qin Yu from all sides. At this moment, the 3 of them possessed ice-cold gazes. Courting death. Qin Yu did not care about that anymore. He immediately rushed forward. Qin Yu's charge caused Xiong Hei and Qin Yu to also rush toward each other. This caused Taoist Lu Su and Mei Ji to be a bit slower. Die! Qin Yu immediately attacked. At the same time, white flames emerged from Qin Yu's body. The white pure flames covered his body. Qin Yu completely ignored the attacks from Taoist Lu Su and Mei Ji and directly attacked Xiong Hei. However, right at this moment, PFFF. An extremely tiny sharp hook rapidly pierced into Qin Yu's body. That tiny sharp hook then escaped with a lightning-like speed. However, Qin Yu's entire body violently trembled. The sword in his hand was no longer able to slash out. Like a block of wood, Qin Yu directly fell down from the sky. Bang! Qin Yu landed on the ground. Silence. The several 100,000 people of the Black Dragon Pool that were watching the battle grew silent. At the same time, they were stunned. Qin Yu, who originally held the upper hand, was actually defeated just like that? Ha! Xiong Hei's loud laughter resounded through the vast sky. Ha! Qin Yu, aren't you still going to die by my hands? Xiong Hei flew down and landed beside Qin Yu. Daoist Lu Su and the pale-faced Mei Ji also landed. Lil Sis Mei Ji, I've troubled you this time around, Xiong Hei said gratefully. The pale-faced Mei Ji shook her head. There's no need to say any more. Earlier, my poisonous soul hook had only been burned by the white pure flame for an instant and had already shrunk by half. The damage this time around, it would take me at the very least several million years to recover. Poisonous soul hook. Mei Ji's natural weapon. Mei Ji's true form was the pink Reaper Scorpion of the Scorpion clan. The poisonous soul hook contained poison. Its attack was not to attack other things but to attack one's soul. When one's soul was attacked, one would become incomparably muddle-headed for a period of time. The might of the poisonous soul hook was also related to the strength of the pink Reaper Scorpion. The stronger the pink Reaper Scorpion was, the stronger the poisonous soul hook would be. Roar! Lord Xiong Hei, Lady Mei Ji, Lord Xiong Hei, Lady Lu Su. All kinds of cheers sounded unceasingly. The entire ravine of the Black Dragon Pool had turned into a sea of jubilation. The several 100,000 people of the Black Dragon Pool were all cheering for Xiong Hei, Mei Ji and Daoist Lu Su. Xiong Hei, Mei Ji and Lu Su were all smiling. They were extremely excited. Xiong Hei laughed loudly. Ha ha, wait for me to kill Qin Yu. Xiong Hei waved the 2-meter-long badly damaged spiked club in his hand and smashed it toward Qin Yu's head on the ground. Bang! Xiong Hei looked to the ground with astonishment. Earlier, Qin Yu's body had suddenly moved half a meter to the side. Xiong Hei's spiked club had only smashed into the ground. And at this moment, Qin Yu had already opened his eyes. He even smiled to Xiong Hei. Xiong Hei, one cannot be too arrogant. Qin Yu's divine awareness voice transmission was still sounding in Xiong Hei's mind. At the same time, hundreds and thousands of scarlet sword silhouettes slashed through Xiong Hei's body. At such a close distance, there were so many sword silhouettes. In merely an instant, Xiong Hei was sliced into pieces. His soul, Yuanying, was also sliced into pieces. His soul was scattered. As for his true spirit, it was merely shaken by Qin Yu's sword silhouettes and scattered. At the moment when Xiong Hei unleashed his sword silhouettes, Qin Yu's body was like a sword. With lightning speed, he streaked across the space and arrived beside Daoist Lu Su. Whoosh! Sword silhouettes soared into the sky. Daoist Lu Su flew back. However, no matter how much he flew back, his body was still sliced into two from the shoulder down. Daoist Lu Su's head flew far away. Fortunately, Daoist Lu Su's reaction was fast. Otherwise, his little life would have been finished. As for Mei Ji, who was the furthest away, her reaction was the fastest. She also rapidly flew far away. Mei Ji flew to the side of the Black Dragon Pool. She rapidly dropped down and landed on the side of the Black Dragon Pool. When others saw her, they would have thought that she was seriously injured. As for Mei Ji, she used her divine awareness to penetrate into the surface of the Black Dragon Pool and sent a voice transmission. Lord Black Dragon, Xiong Hei has died in battle. Lu Su and I might die at any moment. Quickly, come and save us. Chapter 524. Qin Yu stood in the middle of the ravine with his hands behind his back. As for Mei Ji, she was lying beside the Black Dragon Pool. Even the seriously injured Daoist Lu Su, after consuming a large amount of heavenly divine energy to restore his body, flew over to Mei Ji's side and sat on the ground. Silence, oppression. The several 100,000 spectators in the ravine all held their breaths. They did not even dare to breathe loudly. The situation had immediately changed. Earlier, it was Xiong Hei and the other two that wanted to kill Qin Yu. However, Qin Yu, who was lying on the ground, suddenly attacked. Before many of the deities could react, Qin Yu had already killed Xiong Hei and seriously injured Daoist Lu Su. Everything happened in a flash. Mei Ji, when I was lying on the ground earlier, I heard you saying, "Poisonous soul hook, to Xiong Hei. Is that little hook that you used to attack me the poisonous soul hook? Qin Yu lightly smiled and walked to about 10 meters away from Mei Ji. Mei Ji was still sitting on the ground. She merely nodded. At the same time, she asked in confusion. You've been struck by my poisonous soul hook. How are you able to wake up this quickly? Mei Ji knew very well about the attack power of the poisonous soul hook. Mei Ji herself did not possess any powerful attack. Only her poisonous soul hook was a bit strange and special. If her enemy was already prepared for it, then Mei Ji would be an extremely weak person. Woke up this quickly? Qin Yu smiled. What did she mean by woke up this quickly? Qin Yu knew very well that when he was struck by the poisonous soul hook, it merely caused his soul Jin Dan to tremble slightly. Before he was even affected in the slightest, Lu Xing's tear had already emitted a green light to offset that attack. The reason why he fell down earlier was merely because he did it deliberately. Qin Yu suddenly saw that Mei Ji and Lu Su's expression had turned strange. He had a strange feeling. Thus, he lightly smiled and said, Mei Ji, Lu Su, what's with your expressions? Mei Ji and Lu Su glanced at each other and lightly smiled. Qin Yu felt a burst of throbbing in his heart. He immediately turned his gaze to the lake behind Mei Ji and Lu Su, the Black Dragon Pool. Qin Yu knew very well that this large lake with a circumference of over 100 miles was the true Black Dragon Pool. The surface of the Black Dragon Pool had always been as tranquil as a mirror. It was incomparably deep and gave people a kind of soul-shaking feeling. However, at this moment, the surface of the lake that was as tranquil as a mirror actually started to fluctuate. At the same time, a strange and demonic aura started to rise from the surface of the lake. Qin Yu's first reaction was to move his body and fly backwards. In one breath, Xiao Chen retreated 5 kilometers and arrived outside the great array that he had set up. This was a fire-attributed killing array. Once the array was activated, boundless white pure flames would burn. In Qin Yu's opinion, if he sensed that something was amiss, he would immediately enter the formation. The white pure fire was a threat to others, but it posed no threat to Qin Yu. What's in the Black Dragon Pool? Qin Yu clearly felt a sense of crisis. Could it be the leader of the Black Dragon Pool, the legendary missing Black Dragon? Lord Black Dragon had not appeared for many years. Rumble! The Black Dragon Pool began to tremble. The center of the lake began to churn as if it was boiling. The churning grew larger and larger. Suddenly, a figure could be seen standing on the boiling spring water and rising from the bottom of the lake. This person had a height of about 170 centimeters. His muscles were streamlined, and his entire body was dark. He appeared very lean. He had a head full of short scarlet hair that stood erect like steel needles. His scarlet eyebrows were like sharp swords. Beneath the scarlet eyebrows was a pair of gloomy and baleful eyes. We pay our respects to Lord Black Dragon. Mei Ji and Lu Su kneeled down on one knee in a very respectful manner and said with their heads lowered. The several 100,000 onlookers were also silent. However, after a short moment, all of the several 100,000 onlookers kneeled down on one knee. In a very respectful manner, they said in unison, We pay our respects to Lord Black Dragon. The voices of several 100,000 onlookers soared through the clouds. This Lord Black Dragon was only about 170 centimeters tall. He appeared to be a youngster. However, his pair of gloomy and baleful eyes made it impossible for others to believe that he was a youngster. Qin Yu carefully observed this Lord Black Dragon. The battle armor you're wearing is quite special. Qin Yu displayed a slight smile on his face. The divine armor was capable of changing its appearance. As long as one wanted it, it would be able to change its appearance. This Lord Black Dragon's battle armor only protected the majority of his body's vital points. As for his thighs, arms, and other parts of his body, they were completely naked. His dark and beautiful muscles were completely exposed. Furthermore, his short scarlet hair and scarlet eyebrows were both relatively rare. This Lord Black Dragon, with merely a glance at Qin Yu felt a sense of oppression. His soul's level is much higher than mine. Qin Yu was very certain. At the very least, this Lord Black Dragon was a mid-level heavenly deity. You're the person who killed my subordinate, Xiong Hei? That Qin Yu who is proficient in setting up formations? Black Dragon looked to Qin Yu. His voice had a sort of strange metallic feeling to it. Once those words were spoken, Qin Yu determined that this Black Dragon had already obtained information about him. That's right. Qin Yu faced Black Dragon. His long black hair fluttered in the wind. A rare smile appeared on his grave and stern face. You're the legendary Black Dragon that has been missing for many years? I am Black Dragon. Black Dragon's expression was solemn. Qin Yu, you have a path to life and a path to death. The path to life is to serve me and forget about the matter of killing Xiong Hei. The path to death, if you don't serve me, then you will die. Life or death, your choice. Black Dragon raised his scarlet eyebrows. He gave off an arrogant and domineering aura. Qin Yu took a glance at Meiji and Taoist Lu Su. He then raised his head and looked to Black Dragon. Black Dragon, my life or death is something that no one can decide. Even God Kings cannot decide, much less a mere bandit leader like you. Qin Yu pointed his index finger at Black Dragon. Qin Yu's voice was indifferent. His gaze was sharp. He completely ignored the oppressive aura of Black Dragon. Black Dragon slightly raised the corner of his mouth. In that case you can die. Black Dragon extended his hand. A 2-meter-long black stick appeared in his hand. Holding this long stick, Black Dragon rushed toward Qin Yu at an extremely fast speed. His speed was not fast at all. However, he had created several tens of afterimages. Amen? This pace? Qin Yu was surprised to discover that there was something wrong with Black Dragon's pace. Every single step that Black Dragon took gave off an extremely awkward feeling. It was not natural at all. However, it gave off a feeling of a bowstring being stretched taut, as if he could unleash his strongest attack at any moment. What sort of pace is this? No, his aura is increasing. Qin Yu was surprised to discover that in the 10 miles that Black Dragon had been running toward him, his aura had been increasing unceasingly. He did not use his soul's power to increase his aura. Instead, he relied on his pace and rhythm to create an aura that was naturally created. Black Dragon's gloomy eyes stared fixedly at Qin Yu. The baleful aura in his eyes had not changed at all from when he had first appeared until now. It was as if fighting with Qin Yu wasn't worth him using his full strength. If I allow him to build up his aura, his soul's level is higher than mine. If this continues... Qin Yu felt a stifling pressure in his heart. He began to panic. The Black Dragon in front of him was like an unscalable mountain. Furthermore, this mountain was constantly growing taller. Retreat. Just as Black Dragon was about to reach him, Qin Yu took a step forward, stepping directly into the nearby array. This step was something that Qin Yu had prepared long ago. It just so happened that he stepped through the life gate. Black Dragon glanced at the array Qin Yu was in. Without any hesitation, he charged into the killing array. Times upon seeing Black Dragon enter the array, Qin Yu could not help but smile. You are indeed strong. However, I would like to see how you will withstand the omnipresent white pure flames. Qin Yu's quintessential fire had increased by a level to become white pure flames. This also made the array he had set up this time much stronger than before. Furthermore, the array he had set up was complete. The moment Black Dragon stepped into the killing array, the entire killing array began to produce white pure flames. All the white pure flames surged towards Black Dragon. Black Dragon, who looked like a cold youth, held a black staff in one hand as he coldly looked at the white pure flames. White pure flames. Qin Yu, your attainments in array formations are indeed not bad. Black Dragon's scarlet-red brows rose slightly. He stood there, completely unfazed by the approaching white pure flames. As Qin Yu waited in anticipation, a scene that shocked Qin Yu happened. When the white pure flames reached a foot away from Black Dragon, they were actually unable to approach him anymore. This sort of scene was truly too strange. It was so strange that Qin Yu was unable to believe it. Qin Yu and Black Dragon were inside the killing array. However, at this moment, the people outside the killing array were completely confused. "What exactly is happening inside?" said Taoist Lu Su with a frown. Mei Ji also shook her head and said, "We are unable to see clearly at all. Countless white pure flames have filled the entire Great Array formation. Who knows what's happening inside? However, I believe that Lord Black Dragon will definitely win. I also believe that Lord Black Dragon will win. However, it's a rare opportunity to see Lord Black Dragon fight. Yet, I am unable to see it. It's truly regretful," said Taoist Lu Su with a sigh. It was not only him who was sighing. The several 100,000 people watching from afar were also sighing. Countless white pure flames had filled the entire Great Array formation. It was as if the entire Great Array formation had been filled with dense fog. No one knew what was happening inside. "Qin Yu, you don't even know about this?" Black Dragon had a trace of disdain in his eyes. "It would appear that you do not know about the battle style of heavenly deities at all. I truly do not know how you managed to kill Xiong He." After he finished saying that, Black Dragon rushed toward Qin Yu with a lightning speed. The white pure flames were unable to injure Black Dragon in the slightest. This caused Qin Yu to be shocked. However, Qin Yu immediately calmed down. Holding the divine sword Scarlet Blood with one hand, Qin Yu looked at the incoming Black Dragon without moving. When Black Dragon was rushing toward Qin Yu, he gave off a sharp sensation. Whoosh! The black stick in Black Dragon's hand was suddenly thrust forward. As if it had instantly passed through space, the stick arrived before Qin Yu. The long stick was thrust forward while spinning like a poisonous snake. The divine sword Scarlet Blood in Qin Yu's hand was also thrust forward. This sword strike contained the profoundness of the heaven-startling single stick strike. From Qin Yu's point of view, regardless of what kind of weapon it was, it could all use the same type of Tao. He only felt that the spatial energy surrounding the divine sword Scarlet Blood had started to spin and distort. The tip of the divine sword Scarlet Blood had pierced through everything in its path. A sharp and clear collision sound could be heard. The tip of the long stick against the tip of the divine sword. Qin Yu and Black Dragon both flew backwards. Amen. Qin Yu was shocked to discover one thing. The high-quality heavenly divine artifact divine sword Scarlet Blood that possessed the special effect of sharpness was actually not damaged in the slightest by the long stick. "Your divine sword is a high-quality heavenly divine artifact?" That Black Dragon's gloomy eyes suddenly blazed. He was firmly staring at the divine sword Scarlet Blood in Qin Yu's hand. "What makes you think that?" Qin Yu also felt that the situation was bad. That cold and indifferent Black Dragon actually started to laugh. "That's because in the short period of time that I've interacted with you, I've already determined that your strength is merely that of a low-level heavenly deity. Yet, a mere low-level heavenly deity is able to fight equally against me by relying on a heavenly divine artifact. My weapon is a mid-quality heavenly divine artifact. Your weapon is definitely not a mid-quality heavenly divine artifact. Instead, it's the even more powerful high-quality heavenly divine artifact." Only now did Qin Yu realize that the long stick in his opponent's hand was actually a mid-quality heavenly divine artifact. "Qin Yu, don't resist. Your strength is truly very weak." A smile appeared on Black Dragon's face. Perhaps it was because Black Dragon was too happy to see the high-quality heavenly divine artifact in Qin Yu's hand. Qin Yu coldly humphed. "You don't believe me? If I want to kill you, it's as easy as flipping my hand." Black Dragon lightly smiled. Immediately, with Black Dragon as the center, all of the white pure flames within a circumference of 50 meters were avoided. There was not a single white pure flame in this region. As for Qin Yu, he was only a dozen meters away from Black Dragon. Thus, he was naturally within this range. "Why can't I move?" Qin Yu felt as if he had been struck by a body-fixing technique. He was unable to move at all. Black Dragon had a smiling expression in his eyes. A high-quality heavenly divine artifact is sufficient for me to fight against ordinary high-level heavenly deities. Haha. Never would I have expected that I would be able to obtain a high-quality heavenly divine artifact today. Black Dragon, exactly what sort of method did you use? Qin Yu shouted with a frown. Black Dragon was slightly startled. He then smiled and said, Qin Yu, I said that you don't understand a battle between heavenly deities. A battle between heavenly deities, the most important aspect is one's comprehension of space. I, as a mid-level heavenly deity, my comprehension of space is sufficient for me to possess a spatial domain. Within the range of my spatial domain, I am able to suppress my opponents. I am able to completely disregard other things. For example, the white pure flames. Qin Yu immediately understood. Low-level heavenly deities' comprehension of space is sufficient for them to counteract the gravity of the ground and allow them to fly. Mid-level heavenly deities are capable of forming spatial domains. As for high-level heavenly deities, they are capable of destroying a small region of space. When low-level heavenly deities face mid-level heavenly deities, they simply do not have the ability to resist. When mid-level heavenly deities face high-level heavenly deities, they are the same, said Black Dragon with a light smile. Are you confused as to why I said that I would be able to fight against high-level heavenly deities just because I possess a high-quality heavenly divine artifact? Qin Yu carefully listened to Black Dragon. He indeed wanted to know. Unfortunately, I do not wish to tell you. Right now, I shall bestow upon you death. Black Dragon's body moved and arrived before Qin Yu. He swung his stick horizontally and smashed it toward Qin Yu's head. Qin Yu's eyes shined. Inside the universal world that Qin Yu had created, Qin Yu himself had directly entered the universal world. The universal world's spatial energy. Due to the fact that the universal world was still growing, Qin Yu was only able to control a portion of the spatial energy. Qin Yu controlled the universal world's spatial energy to pass through the obstruction between the universal world and the divine realm. He connected the spatial energy to the point where he had just left, the coordinates. After the spatial energy connected to that point, it still had the strength to spread a distance of about 100 meters. Huff. Qin Yu once again appeared at his original location. At this moment, Black Dragon was still looking all around for Qin Yu. When he saw Qin Yu's sudden appearance, he was startled. How did you disappear? Could it be that you know teleportation? No, that's impossible. Regardless of how calm Black Dragon was, he was still unable to understand what had happened. Teleportation? Qin Yu was slightly startled. He had merely entered the universal world and then re-entered it. However, upon hearing the word teleportation, Qin Yu suddenly had a flash of inspiration. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.